I'm Nick Von Walkerbarth, and you're listening to the Von Dubcast. If you don't want to listen to me gap in the intro and you want to skip right to the interview, skip about 8 minutes. But before you do, please consider doing one of these couple things that really helps out the show. Following the social medias for the Von Dubcast, subscribing, and leaving a review. If you could do those things, that'd be awesome. Also, give me a subscription on the YouTube channel. That'd be great too. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 102 of the Von Dubcast. Today's episode is one that I've been waiting to bring you guys for months. Our guest today is Cody Twinn. If you haven't heard it yet, please just pause this, go back, download episode number 30, and listen to that conversation. It was the first time that me and Cody sat down in many years. We grew up quite close when we were little kids, and then kind of went on different directions, as you'll hear in that episode, and probably this one too. And it was just an amazing conversation. It's probably the best interview I did in the first 100. And I wanted it back right after the fact. You know, as soon as we finished that conversation, I had a whole page of things I didn't even get to. And I knew I wanted to have him back on, but it was a little bit, it's a little bit tough to get people back on. I think it's so nerve-wracking leading up to it that I think some people remember that more. And then, you know, I think Cody had a really great time. You know, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but and we talked about, you know, oh, we should do this again soon. And you know, we're both all about it. But then a couple weeks went by, a couple months go by, and then you forget all the fun parts, and you just remember the how scary and nervous it is to build up to it. But we finally made it happen. I mean, and like we talked about in the first episode, you know, sometimes it just not working out like that just means the conversation when it does happen is going to be that much better. And I think that was one of those cases. So we finally made it work, and it was another amazing conversation. I love Cody's mind. I love how deeply he thinks about things and how willing to see other sides of the subject he is. I think it just really, he's really what would be the word? Like unstructured. Like I feel like so many people's minds just get so structured that it's really hard for them to be flexible and to see other sides of things. And I feel like Cody is just so intrinsically flexible that just the way he looks at things, it's very fun. I really enjoy talking to him all the time, whether it's recorded or not. I love running ideas by him, just if it's, whether it's a big meaty idea or just something kind of inconsequential. I know if I run it by Cody, he will give it the full capacity of his mind, which I think is very rare. And I appreciate the hell out of that in people. I think, you know, I look for that in employees. I look for that in friends. I think it's just a really strong attribute that maybe doesn't get the love it deserves. So another amazing conversation here with Cody. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys are going to enjoy it too. I'll try not to make this another 20-30 minute intro because I know it's already a decently long episode, but just a little update with me. Stomach's feeling a little bit better. I was able to get a workout in yesterday, just a light one, and then a decent one today, a little, you know, not quite 10K, but you know, a little bit lighter pace and a longer run. My hip's still bugging me. I was kind of hoping with all this stomach issues maybe that'd be more time for my hip to rest, but no, it's still bugging me a little bit, but working through it. It's just been me and the dog here. We've been enjoying our days. It's been raining like a mother, but I've been trying to get her a good walk. She's just needs so much attention. It's tough with this little dog. I was watching the Oiler game and the fights yesterday, and just she doesn't like when I lock in on something like the hockey game or the fights, because she knows she's not going to get any attention, so she just pouts. But she's so cute and so what do you call it? Like not emotional, but like very much shows her emotions. For a dog, it's amazing. She just makes you feel bad. She's currently just rolling around like the cutest little thing, chewing on her bone right at my feet here. But man, has that been nice to have this dog back. Oh, I love her so much. She's so much just the piece of joy that I need in my life right now. Just to, you know, in the mornings when she snuggles up and tries to bite your face off. Oh man, did she bite my hand the other day? We went to play and she missed the toy. She almost chopped my whole thumb off. Jesus Christ. And I felt so bad. I got mad. Like I yelled because it hurt, and you know, she went running away and cowering, and then I just felt so bad to see her scared of me. Like, oh, my heart still breaks. It's been haunting me. That was yesterday, and like still 24 hours removed plus, I can't even get that image of her cowering when I was trying to go up to her after out of my head, because she knows she messed up, and it, you know, my thumb was bleeding quite bad, and I was, you know, upset, and I think she could tell that I was mad, and I was like, oh, I don't want you ever to be scared of me. Oh, you poor little thing. So we had lots of extra cuddles last night and this morning, and after I finish this intro and get this all set up to go out tomorrow with the outro and all that jazz, write a description of that. I'm going to take her for a nice long walk. And then no hockey, no nothing on today. So I think I'll probably just be, catching up on some video games. I think I said in the last intro for the episode 101 that I've been just holding off buying any of these video games or playing any of these video games for a couple of reasons. Like one, I just feel like I can't be lazy right now and do something else. And two, I've been just trying to hold everything back. So when I start streaming, I have all these games to play. But I just kind of said, like, that's silly. Like, you need some enjoyment too. Like, you're going through so much bullshit. Like, video games used to be one of your favorite things back in the day to just kind of reset and to recharge. So I downloaded Far Cry 6 and I've been playing it. I've only played a couple hours of it so far. Just with all the fights and the hockey games going on. But I hope to, after I get this all set up to record and take the dog for a walk and maybe give her a good brush, just to really sit down and bite into it. I love the Far Cry games. I'd never played them growing up, but I bought the last one that came out and it was so much fun. It's a really great game and I've really been enjoying that. And it's just a really important lesson to not denigrate and not look down upon things that you appreciate and that you're passionate about, like video games, just because of like the stigma around them. I think like so much of the reason I was holding back from video games because of what everybody thinks of them. But you know what? Like, this whole venture I'm doing is a big fuck you to what people think about things like that. And I'm like, why am I holding myself back from something? And already just a couple hours of that, like, it's a different kind of reset where your mind can just turn off or go into a different place and you come out of it so much more refreshed. And I feel like that's something that doesn't get articulated enough about the benefits of things like video games. And the more I get into them again, hopefully I can help articulate and fight for that side of the battle, for the pro video game side of the world, and really show what it can give and what it can do for people. So that's what's going on in my life. Hopefully your life is going great. Hopefully you're kicking ass. If not, one foot in front of the other. I know times are tough. I know things are crazy. All you can do is try and take as much accountability as you can for the things, even if it's really tough to do. Have compassion for everybody around you. Try and see from their side and really understand other people's viewpoints. And what do I always ended up on? Oh, and tell people that you love them. Doesn't matter if you're a guy, doesn't matter if you're a girl, doesn't matter, all that stuff. Just tell people you love them if you do. That's the important thing. That's what we need more of. Other than that, please subscribe. Please follow the social medias. Please share a post. Please reach out. Any of those things. If you have guest ideas, please send them my way. The VonDubcast@gmail.com is the best place probably to send things. If you want to come on board with the Von Dubcast to help out, I'm looking for extra help with a bunch of different roles. If you don't need any sort of skills, just please reach out and I'll put you to work if you're willing. Other than that, keep an eye out for the business consulting podcast and business coming forward soon. Keep a lookout for streaming. Like I've said, that is a bit more of a momentous task than I thought it was going into it, but I'm going to get on it one of these days and it's going to be exciting. So other than that, just please enjoy this conversation with Cody. He's a really special guy. If you see him around, please try and convince him to start his own podcast. I just think he has knowledge that the world needs. And eventually I'm going to convince him and he'll have his own podcast so he doesn't have to, I don't have to bug him for months on end to kind of, get 2 or 3 hours of his time to bring to you guys. Cause I really think he's one of those voices that the world needs. So sit back, enjoy, and I'll see you guys in the outro. Bye. All right. Thanks for being here again, Cody.
Yeah, man.
I just want to start off by saying a really big thank you for that last episode. I don't think in the first 100 episodes, I don't think there's been an episode that had that kind of impact and had that many people reach out to me and just say like, wow, was that ever a special episode? And just the vulnerability that you showed and like the depth that the conversation went to. And that's exactly like when people ask me nowadays of like, what do you want? Like, what's a good episode that shows what you want the podcast to be? And that's the one I always point people to, because like, that's the depth of conversation that I want to get to and that I love to have. But you can't do that with one person. You need like, it's like a dance. You need two people that can go to those depths, because you're passing the ball back and forth and you're getting deeper and deeper. And if ever, like in a normal interview, if somebody doesn't catch on or misses one of those balls, you kind of got to keep it at that level, but you just kept taking it deeper and feeding off what we're doing. And I just loved what that was. And I'm so thankful I listened to it this morning on the way in and just what an episode that was. Like, fuck, you got some really good stuff inside you.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's awesome, man. And like, it was funny to hear you, because at one point in the podcast you said like, I don't think I'm articulate. And I just listened to like 2 hours of you just be saying the most articulate shit. And you said like, I'm not articulate. I was like, yeah, bullshit, Cody, you're not. Oh, fuck. So, since then, how have you been?
I've been pretty good.
Yeah.
I've been pretty good. started that new job. So I live in Southside Edmonton, and I work in St. Albert at the Poundmakers Lodge.
Poundmakers Lodge.
So that's a new adventure for sure. Just kind of what you just said about I don't see myself as being articulate. I think that's like, because I was thinking about that yesterday. Actually, I went on a run and I was kind of thinking about myself, and I was thinking like just kind of how I'm hard on myself.
Yeah,
like very, very critical. Like sometimes I don't know if it's always a healthy critical.
Yeah,
like if it's always healthy, but I try to find that balance between being self-aware and having that healthy criticalness.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just thinking about that. Sometimes I just, I got self-esteem things that I'm still working on for sure.
Everybody does.
I think I always will, but, yeah, I've been pretty good. Poundmakers has been, really interesting.
Yeah, I bet.
Really interesting. All kinds of characters. I think I've met already around like 300 clients.
Wow.
Something like that.
Wow. And I have so many questions to jump into on Poundmakers and what that job is. But just before we get there, because I'm worried I'm going to forget this, when you mentioned that thing about being really hard on yourself, I definitely feel that too. And that's something that I see. And I think that's something that I always struggled with. And what really helped me along the way was hearing somebody like Joe Rogan, who talks about that a lot. That's one of his biggest motivating things, how hard he is on himself. And so many of the people that I look up to and I admire all kind of struggle with that same issue. Yeah. And another thing that I see between all of us and our conversation the other time, of both of us have very big egos, right? Very strong egos. Yeah. And I wonder if those two things are tied, about having that really, really, really strong inner critic, and having a big ego, because it seems like when I look back at all these people that kind of seem to struggle with that same thing, they all kind of have that too. And I wonder if somehow those two things come together. I'm not sure how that would make sense. I haven't fully articulated it in my head, but it seems true. Some reason. Yeah,
like I've what I was thinking about yesterday when I was running, because I was thinking about this woman, and she's very beautiful, right? She's very attractive. Like what superficially what a person would say is like, oh, that woman's a 10, right? But what I've also noticed is like interacting with this person, it's like she seems pretty insecure and like pretty like self-conscious, right? And it's strange because like any person that would see this person would be like, wow, that's a really beautiful person. But it's almost like that person seems to notice their flaws more, or they're harder on themselves, or they're trying to get more attractive, or they're trying to dress nicer, or they're trying to improve their body more. And like, I've wondered like how much of that is like feeling like they're not good enough, or how much of that is just like healthy, wanting to improve, wanting to be healthier. Like, where's that balance of like, I don't really love myself, so I'm trying to make myself into a better human being? Or how much of that is like, no, I do love myself, but I also want to improve and see how much potential I have to realize, kind of thing. Yeah. And that's like where I'm at too. Like, cause I will notice other people too, that there's another guy that I know, he's very intelligent, like high IQ, but I can see that this person struggles maybe with some depression or some shame or some, and then in the same way, that person is trying to gain more skills, more talent, more knowledge. Like they're trying to almost like improve their intelligence. And this person probably has like a greater intelligence than the average person, like a higher IQ than average. And I can see that this person is like finding ways to take nootropics, or trying to find like just ways to improve their intelligence, what it already is. It's almost like they don't feel good enough with what they have, or they have higher expectations, or more pressure, or whatever it is.
The pressure of having that identity of being smart, you always want to, right? If that's your armor, that's what protects you against the world. I'm smart, because I have this all the time you're always worried about someone else, or losing that, or smart is relative, right? If you're in a room of really smart people, your armor of that thing that makes you special, that thing that's your identity, is kind of stripped away. So you're always working on that, because you never want to be in that space, right? I think that's the same with, guys that really put their identity on being tough, or the biggest guy in a fight. You get them in a room full of professional fighters, right? Now they're average. They're average, right? Their specialness is gone. I think that's one of those things where it's good to be aware of those things. It's good to understand yourself and your own value systems, to be able to look at yourself and why you're putting value on this thing. And is that healthy, right? Do I have a healthy amount of value on my strength, on my intelligence, or am I putting myself in a detriment because I'm so consumed with this identity of this, I'm the smart guy, that it's preventing me from being as well-rounded as I could, or maybe preventing me from working on the other aspects of my life, or maybe you could be more well-balanced. Maybe you're really emotionally stunted, but you're very intelligent, right?
Yeah.
What's going to benefit you more? Working more on your intelligence, or maybe working on the areas where you're lesser in that, right? Like that's something that I often think about with those types of things and with identity. A big reason that got me thinking about that was listening to Spit and Chicklets podcast about all these ex-NHL players that have such a struggle leaving the league because they have such an identity. I'm a hockey player. That's who I am. And then they lose that and they just are, it's catastrophic to these guys, right? Because they've never seen themselves. And it really got me asking the question about identity and where you place value and just how much you need to be introspecting on that and being conscious of that. Because if not, you're setting yourself up to be very vulnerable, because something can happen that could change that thing. Life is crazy. Shit can happen all the time, right? Like something can change. You've got to be multifaceted, and you've got to love yourself for a lot of things, right? You shouldn't just love your intelligence. You should love your kindness and love yourself as a well-rounded whole, the good and the bad. Just have love for everything, right? And that's kind of that space you need to be.
And that's such a challenging thing.
Such a challenging thing.
Like accepting my limitations, or accepting my defects of character or my flaws, or the ways that I don't really, like what Jordan Peterson would say, like missing the mark, so to speak. Like that's because, like, speaking for myself, like, cause I was like deeply into that, right? Like all about image and all about, like how good I looked or how smart I sounded, or like I always wanted to appear a certain way because I felt like the way I was expressing myself wasn't good enough. But I mean, now today, like, I feel like I'm at a place where I do accept myself quite well.
Yeah.
And I do want to improve. Like, I still want to get better at things, and I still want to like become. I still want to learn and grow. But I feel like I'm at a place now where I do more accept myself.
Yeah.
For all of that I am.
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting better at that for sure.
And that's a constant journey. You'll never be there 100%. And that was something that I really struggled with, talking about that harsh inner critic that kind of started this whole kind of route that we're on. That was something that I really struggled with, was because I always knew that I didn't love myself completely, and I had a lot of hatred. And a lot of it was body issues, and a lot of it was narratives that were told to me, lots of family stuff and just things that you carry, that you're carrying from childhood. And I knew I needed to work on those, but a part of it was scary because that harsh inner critic that created, oh shit, my mic's about to fall off. That harsh critic that created, to some level, I feel like that's what made me special, and that's what made me successful. That drive of that questioning everything you do. Like, it may not be the healthiest thing, but it really made me who I was up until that end. What was scary was if I start to love myself and I lose that piece, am I going to get lazy? Am I going to be that same person? Who will I be without that? Yeah. And I think that was a big thing that was preventing me from going down that path of learning to love myself fully. And once I did, I started to find that balance of, loving every piece of myself. And then it became this weird balance of just having really honest conversations with myself of, where do you let that critic run wild, and where does it serve you, and where do you need to really harness it back? And that's I'm finding that's a very hard thing to balance.
Yeah, it is. It's tricky, eh?
Because I feel like I know myself, and I'm very good at taking advantage. I'm very lazy innately. Like I like to take the easy way out. I like the efficient, like I know I have that within myself, and I find like starting to love myself for each piece of my being. I want to love that, but I don't want to give in to that piece of myself, right? Like I want to hold myself to a higher standard than that, even though I know that it's in there and I have love for it. And I'm trying to love that, not hate like I used to. I hated that piece of myself that was kind of lazy and would look for the easy way out. And I would always structure my life around it, trying to hold love for it, but not just sink into it and let myself be that if it doesn't serve me. You know what I mean? I feel like that's something I'm really just struggling with every day. Of kind of since I've been on that journey, that's kind of the new struggle that it's became, which I think is a lot healthier struggle than what it used to be, of just hating yourself at everyone and just using the forward momentum of self-hatred, which I think a lot of people use. And I think there's a lot of people that walk through the world, but it didn't leave me in a very happy place. And I think I'm finding a lot healthier fuel. I think Aubrey Marcus talks about this a lot. Everyone has fuel that burns them, but some fuels burn cleaner than others. And hate is a kind of a dirty fuel, right? And it might serve you in a time of your life, but if you have the ability and the skills to transition into something better, like love or passion or whatever it is that you can start to burn instead, you're going to be much healthier in your life, right? Mentally, physically, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
So then getting back to the Poundmakers Lodge. So could you maybe just break down to me what the Poundmakers Lodge is and what they do first? And then I can ask you maybe a couple questions about how you're liking it.
Well, Poundmakers, it's a treatment center for addictions. So it's rehab.
Yeah.
And it's more culturally based, spirituality based. So there's like a lot of indigenous kind of like philosophies that are integrated into it. So there's like, they have sweat lodges and smudging, and they have praying, and they have counselors and a psychologist, a detox program for people who are still under the influence when they want to get to the pound, when they want to enter the program.
Yeah.
So they have a 42 program for adults, and then they have a 90-day program for youth, people like 18 to 24. And yeah, they're big on like group therapy, and like what I do is I'm a program attendant, so like non-client support. So like I'm not a counselor. I won't counsel people, but a lot of times like what I do is I listen and I'll share my experiences.
Yeah.
So what I do is I'll like help facilitate the programs, take like attendance, cue people, like make sure they're following the rules that the Poundmakers Lodge has implemented and stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of what I do. Non-client support, just make sure everyone's where they're supposed to be, interact with the clients.
Yeah.
I attend the sweats and stuff. I attend the sweats. That's on my off time though. I'm not allowed to attend the sweats during my shift.
Right.
And even I wouldn't even want to do that, because that just goes against my values and my conscience. And, yeah, that's what Poundmakers is basically a treatment center for addictions. All walks of life are welcome. It's not just for First Nations. Like there's lots of all different colors of people that come there. And it's,
but it has its base in that. And what's so cool to me is just from our first conversation of seeing how much of that type of stuff helped you in your own personal journey, to have a facility that kind of specializes in the type of healing that helped you so much, for you to be able to kind of hop into that in whatever your role is, but just to be around that and in that kind of space of healing that helped you so much, and to be able to now share that with people. I bet you that feels pretty special. Yeah,
it feels very, very, it's very rewarding.
Yeah.
It's for me, it's both tragic and it's both beautiful.
Where do you see the tragedy?
For me, the tragedy is just like, because when I'll be talking to a client, and then they'll share with me either their traumas or what they've been through or what they're going through. And like a lot of it, it's like really, it's heartbreaking. And it's like, it just, some things like I can't share specific stories because that's against the confidentiality. Yeah. But like, there's just some things that it's like you almost can't imagine how somebody can go through the things they went through and still be breathing. And it's like, for me, it's inspiring, and it gives me a certain level of hope, and like it shows me the strength of the human spirit,
the resiliency that's within us.
The resilience, like, and just that, like how they want to get better and they want to change. And there's so much mixed feelings for me, because like it's rewarding when I can see someone enter the program and they're all mangled and they're all just like out of it, right? And then over the course of 4 weeks, they start to improve and they start getting their spirit back and they start getting happier, and then they start walking taller and they start sounding more confident, and they look you in the eye and you can see the light in their eye, and it's like you can see them improving, and then it's like that's rewarding, and it's beautiful, and it's like I get to be a part of that. And another thing it does for me is it, in a strange way, makes me grateful for my life too. Like, it's like, it gives perspective a little bit. It gives me perspective. Yeah. Like it makes me very grateful for my life and stuff. And, that's just some of the things that goes on there. And, Sorry, I was just texting Courtney to go buy some batteries just in case. Now we've fallen down the one bar, just in case. No worries. So, the tragedy and the beauty of it, and what's interesting to me to hear that was when you first said that, I expected some sides of it to be sad and some sides of it to be beautiful, but what it seems like is it's not delineated like that. Both it's almost the same thing. It's both beautiful and sad at the same time. Like these stories, like the resilience and the tragedy in the story, right? Like it almost really highlights how those feelings are the two sides of the same coin, and what all it takes is
a perspective shift, a viewpoint shift of this can be the most tragic thing you've ever heard, or this can be the most amazing thing you've ever heard, because that's something that you can overcome. And now everything you do from this point forward is done in the face of what you've been through. And that is such a celebration and such a magical thing that you've been through all this terrible, tragic shit. And look at what you're accomplishing. Even if it's just, getting your life back together and getting a job and getting off the street for some people, that might be that accomplishment. Or maybe it's reaching some really crazy highs that have traditional, what society deems, whatever that is. It doesn't matter, because whatever you're doing, as long as you're still here, kicking, breathing, fighting another day, that's what matters over top of anything else. And that way you can do that in the face of everything you've been through. That's beautiful, right? Like, that's I wonder how you're feeling having both those highs and the lows that the job brings. Overall, how does that affect your own mental health as you're working through the job and as you're getting more familiar with it and just watching other people go through these experiences? How does that affect you mentally?
I think the way it affects me is like, it's a balance. So like, it's sort of like a roller coaster, but not so, there's not so many extremes. But I think for me, the reason why I'm able to I feel a lot more emotionally stable now in my life.
Really?
And I feel a lot more able to, have compassion and empathy, but not take too much of it home.
Okay.
And not take so many things personally, because there's a lot of things that happen, and it's like, some days are really good and it's just, they're easy days and they're fun and like, they're beautiful and it's like interesting. And then other days it's challenging. It's like, it's challenging in the way that it tests patience.
Yeah.
And like, to not take if someone's having a bad day and say they had a counseling session with somebody and then they opened up some stuff, and then I go to work and then they want to take it out on the PAs or whatever. And it's like they can have an aggression about them, or they can have a hostility about them. And it's like, to not take that personally and to just like still have compassion and understand, like, okay, like they're going through something. And if they get short with me, or if they look at me a certain way, or they have aggressive energy, or, it's not about me. It's like, having tolerance and patience, and just that side can be kind of challenging. Some of the breakdowns or panic attacks, or like some of the people getting really angry, like some of that stuff can be challenging. But I think, like you said, like getting sober, getting myself in a good place, that stuff all kind of prepared me for this job. Like now, like if I was to take this job 6 years ago, like I would get fired probably the first week, or I would probably would have quit, or, I might have gotten a fight or something, something. Right. So like I feel like, a lot of my adversities and a lot of the hardships that I went through, and a lot of my own self-healing really, prepared me to be of best of service. Cause that's one of the things that where my growth has taken me now, is like, I was so, like, I'll be real, like, rigorously honest. It's like, I struggle with narcissistic tendencies. Like, I want to be admired. I want to be valued. I want people to praise me. I want people to look up to me and see me as like this gifted, insightful, intelligent Indian.
There you go.
So like, there's that side you're talking about earlier about like the ego, right? Like, I think it can be used in a good way. And
but as long as it serves you.
Yeah. And now, like, I'm moving more towards humility and what can I do for others, not in a codependent kind of way, but in a way that's like, how can I be of best service how can
I share these skills that I've learned that have helped me so much?
How can I live by example and like live with integrity? And like today, that's something that I do my best, is like consulting my conscience. Like I struggle with that, because I don't always know when I'm just being critical of myself and shaming myself, which is I think is unhealthy, or how much of that is my conscience. Like, where's the line between my inner critic and my conscience? Like, is my conscience saying like, okay, you're being dishonest here. And then I feel that guilt, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to lie this time. Or how much of it is like, I'm not being dishonest, but my inner critic is saying like, fuck, you're being a piece of shit, or you're not doing good enough for this or that or that. And like, it's abusing me. Right. And it's like, that's where I'm at in my life now, is where I'm trying to figure out trying to be as self-aware as possible of like, okay, this is my conscience.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm going against my values and like the goodness of my heart. And this is where I have that tyrant inside my mind. That's
right.
You know,
and the way I separate those two things, Cody, is the way I look at it is that the inner critic, of, just to use the terminology used, the inner critic versus that conscious, that's something innate to you, that you know what feels right to you and what is and isn't okay, right? But then you have that, and everyone's born with that. That's innate, and it comes from like your deepest. I think it has something to do with conditioning too. It's how you're brought up, right? The values. And I think that's something we talked about in the last podcast about the positive things. We talked about some of the negative issues of the racism and the closed-mindedness of growing up in slavery, but we also talked about a lot of like the positive things of what it gave us, of like kind of the code of honor and how you treat people and just that kind of that small town feel. And I think that's a big part of it. But when I look at that, the difference between your conscious, and that inner critic is the inner critic is that your conscience plus all the narratives that you've been told and all the societal shit, right? And all that packed on top of that. It's not that deep living thing. It's what other people are going to think. It's how you're perceived. It's got all those other things tied into it. And what you're trying to do is take off the layers of that you don't want. Like society's told me I should value this, but that doesn't match up with my inner conscious. And you're trying to bring those two things into one almost. And you're trying to slough off the layers of this critic that doesn't serve you, right? This is, okay, society tells me I'm supposed to really chase money and value money. How does that match up? Like, does that line up with my inner truth of what I'm after? Well, maybe not. Now I can adjust that inner critic to kind of more match what my conscious intent. I feel like people can very easily just take on society's inner critic and try and live your life by fitting into society's box that they want. And I feel like what the journey you're on is about separating those two things out and trying to bring that inner critic more in line with that true conscious that you feel, right? And I think that's very much kind of something I've gotten from Jordan Peterson as well, is him talking about that, of like your conscience is a very important thing. You should always be listening for it, but it can be corrupted, right? There's other things that go into it. It's a skill, just like everything else is a skill. Listening and quietening enough to be able to hear the true piece of your conscience of what that's telling you and to be able to interpret that is a skill that you need to work on. I think that's so scary for people. Not a lot of people do. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking, like, about the conscience. Like, one of the things, like we were talking about in the last podcast about my anger and stuff, and just kind of like how I was when I was in my addiction. Yeah. And like, I think one of the things I did in my addiction, well, I know, is that I learned how to ignore my conscience and even shut it off somehow. Yeah. Like I don't think I really truly shut it off.
But dampened it with substances and mindsets.
Yeah. And then I got like accustomed to not listening to it. And like this whole recovery journey for me is like that word recovery, right? Like, what am I recovering? Like, I'm recovering like who I was when I came here, like who I'm meant to be, like what I really like, what I really enjoy.
That's powerful stuff.
Like what do I really think? How do I really feel? Like, that's what my journey of recovery for me is about. Recovering what I like, sort of what I lost, and maybe what I lost in my addiction was some of my conscience, or listening to my conscience, or listening too much to, like you said, what society wants, like what my family wants, or what my friends want, or what their expectations were. And I feel like that's when I'm getting back to myself. Yeah. I'm getting back to myself. Like, I was just thinking this on my way driving here, was like, I was thinking about like, right now I'm in a music phase. Yeah. Like, I'm really like enjoying music, right? Yeah. Like, I'm really like, I want to practice more guitar. I want to practice singing. Like, I really want to get to a point where I can even write songs and create my own music and stuff. And like, what I've realized with myself is like, I have like a low self-esteem when it comes to music. It's like, I don't feel very confident in myself when it comes to music. Yeah. Like, someone could be like, "Oh, you're getting better at singing," and I would think to myself like, "No, I'm not. I'm not really that exactly good." What you're saying. You know what I mean? But I don't know how much of that is humility or how much that is just having a low self-esteem in that area. But what I was realizing, I was like, oh yeah, I was like, because I was thinking about my past, I was like, why do I feel like that? And I was looking back, and in my addiction, before I started my addiction, like, I remember, I don't know where I picked this belief up, whether it was from people around me or I just created it for myself as an excuse. But like, when I was a little kid, I remember one of my babysitters, her boyfriend was playing the guitar, and I remember like watching him play guitar, and I was like, wow, like that is the most beautiful thing I ever saw. Like, I want to be able to do that. I want to sing. I want to play guitar. And like, I want to be able to do that. I remember when I think he played some Nirvana song, and I got goosebumps when he was playing it. And I was like, it felt really good. Right. And then somewheres along the line, I picked up a belief that like, people who play music are sissies, or they're fags, or they're like, they're not cool. Like that's what like sissies do or something. That's what my internal voice was telling me. So, and then same thing with poetry, and then with singing and dancing, and like the more artistic side of life. So I shut that part of me off through my addiction. And now that I'm like in my recovery, and I've been sober for a few, like 7 years, 6 years or whatever, I'm starting to find that like, no, like I actually enjoy playing guitar. I actually enjoy singing. I actually enjoy writing poetry, reading it. Like I'm starting to find the things that I really love to do, and that I find joy in.
What about dance?
Dance, I like dancing too. Yeah,
me too.
You know, I'm still shy about it and whatever, but when I do dance, like I feel like liberated and free, because in my addiction, I never gave myself permission to explore that side of myself or explore those activities, because I thought that's not what men do, or that's not what I do. Like that's not Cody. Cody doesn't do that. Cody's a hockey player. Cody's a fighter. Cody's a drunk. Cody's all these labels.
Narratives that you have in your head.
And I can't be this thing. And then when I first started playing guitar, I was like, man, this is hard, man. Like, holy shit. Like this isn't easy. Yeah. And my ego was like, you should just be a pro at this right now. Like you should just be able to sing songs and play, like, so you should just give up. Yeah. You know, I was like, that took me a long time to get through that. And then once I first learned my first song, like simple chords or whatever, I felt this like confidence where like maybe I can actually do this, you know, like maybe I can, and I don't need to be a rock star. I don't need to be famous and sell millions of albums or become platinum or whatever, you know, but I enjoy it, you know.
Exactly. And that's all that matters.
I have fun with it. It's something that brings me happiness. It's not all about, for me, it's all about like, oh, I'm going to be a famous rock star, and then people are going to love me once I get all my admiration and, you know, that type of thing. So I'm getting more self-aware on that side of it. And, that's something that recovery brought me back, was like, just like, what do I want to do? And what do I like to do? You know? Yeah. Instead of what I think other people want me to do.
It kind of takes all of those narratives they talk about of like who you are, and it kind of resets things of, okay, I thought I knew who I was, but now I've taken a step back and I've taken inventory, and I've realized that all those things I thought I was were things that people were telling me I was. And some of those might be true, because you might be a hockey player. You might really enjoy hockey, right? You might enjoy fighting. You know, maybe that's a bad example, but that doesn't mean that's not who you are. But you need to take inventory to investigate. Is this truly who I am, or is this something that I've taken on, right? And you can let go of some of those narratives. You can hold on to some of those narratives. You can hold on to pieces of those narratives, right? Like I might not identify as a hockey player, but I identify because I do enjoy the sport, or whatever middle ground you find between all those things. But it also opens up the door to, now that you've done that and you've taken away the power that all those narratives hold, now you can open up to new ones, and you can bring your own narratives on, right? Like that's what we talked about on the last episode, right? Like Courtney being shy. That was that narrative that she had to, you know, slough off eventually and to get past. And it's really difficult, but sometimes, you know, it's hard to call recovery, you know, it's a different way to look at it, to call recovery a gift. But when you look at it through a certain lens, there's so many gifts that it gives back to you, right? Of the things that it's opening the door for you to go through and to experience, and to maybe things that you never would have explored in your life. Like maybe you never would have picked up that guitar if you never went through that specific experience of life experiences, right? Like it's interesting to me how much just the way you look at things changes the actual outcome, or the actual feeling of how they feel in the moment. That's such a powerful thing, right? Like and I think I get that from, you know, guys like Aubrey Marcus, like someone who's helped me so much, right? Like just been so much like the dancing of like, I've told this story a million times on the podcast, so apologies to everybody that's heard this. I think I just told it on the last podcast anyway. But I used to love to dance. But I was always so shy about it in public. Unless I was blackout drunk, I would never dance in front of people, right? Like I hated it. But I'd hear Aubrey Marcus talk about all the time about ecstatic dance therapy, and just what a freedom it is just to take people that have that shyness and get them in a room and just say, don't dance like you think, like you've seen on TV. Dance, just let your body move like you want to move it, and just enjoy that, and just work on it, scream, make noise, whatever you need to do. Just get back in touch of just letting your body move and let go of all those narratives of how you're going to be seen and what a transformational experience that is, right? And that something of that must have leaked into my head, because when I went on that trip to Europe before I moved out to Grand Prairie, I went into it, and I think it was also a piece of not knowing anybody. So it was that freedom to, if I'm going to try this, and I just said, like, for this trip, it doesn't matter if I'm drunk or not. Every dance floor we get to, I'm going to tear that shit up. I'm going to be the, first guy on, last guy off that dance floor, and it won't matter. And I'm just going to enjoy it. And through that trip, that's what I did. And now since then, I dance all the time. I completely lost all that shyness about it. I really enjoy it. I'm not the best dancer in the world by leaps and bounds, but I don't give a fuck about it anymore. Like, I enjoy it. I get so much value out of dancing myself that I don't care if there's a whole fucking room full of, beautiful girls watching me and laughing at me at the same time. That doesn't matter, because I get so much out of it. That's worth it to me. Whatever you line up, and there's never going to be a room full of beautiful girls watching you and laughing at you, right? That's what you build up in your brain. But so now, like, what, some person you don't know what a bar is going to laugh at you. Who cares, right? But like, what I noticed was the confidence that gave me. Like, that was one weird esoteric area of my life where I gained confidence. But the way that rolled into everything else, and just getting back in touch with myself of that one thing, helped me in so many other areas. And it's funny how much of that, like, we don't realize how interconnected all these things we work on are. And you might work on this one area of life that you think is very, off on its own, and it's not really going to affect much, and it has all these ripples throughout everything else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it sounds like it's like about loving yourself too, right?
For
like,
sure.
That's where it leads back to, right?
100%.
Like loving our own humanness.
And I take that moment, Cody. It's funny you stumbled upon it, because I was in a really big place of trying to love it. That was right when I just graduated university, and I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know what to do. And I was back in Slave Lake, and all my friends from Slave had 4 years where I was gone, and they'd kind of, not moved on, but just found new things and just do things differently, and were into kind of different things. And I felt really on the outside, and I was really working on because of that, I was really forced to work on myself and trying to love myself. And I was listening to all these podcasts, and I was listening to guys like Joe Rogan and Aubrey Marcus for the first time. And it was so transitionatory. But I was never really fully in love with myself. And I feel like that trip, the dancing is only one piece of it. I think also going out on my own and just having that whole, transformative trip through Europe for a month was but I market that as the time I started loving myself fully. Like, I'm sure it was more fluid than that. It wasn't actually during that month that it happened, but it's hard to kind of put timelines on it. And that's definitely a huge piece of that. Something happened in that month that I came out of it with a way better capability to love myself. And I'm still working on that. Like, I still stumble with it every day, but yeah. I noticed that was a huge part of it. And I don't know if the dancing part was 90% of that, 20% of it, but it was definitely a piece of it. Yeah. And I think that was very interesting to me, because if you would ask me before that, if, like, what do you think the maximum effect something like dance can have on your life, I would have put it pretty low on the list. But until you experience that yourself, you don't realize how much of an impact you can have, right? And I think that helped me believe in a lot of other stuff that I probably wouldn't have. Lots of the stuff that comes from Aubrey Marcus, I think a couple years ago, I would have been pretty, turning my nose up at a lot of the stuff he says. But because so much of it has worked for me already, I go into it with a way more open mind and open heart to take in those things. Oh, well, maybe there's something to it, right? I'm sure all of it's not, all 100% fact-based and it all works. But if you go into it just believing that some stuff works for you, some stuff doesn't, give everything a try and be open-minded about it, you're so much better off. And you're so much more set up to take in new tools and to set yourself up for a better future kind of thing.
Yeah, there's like that kind of reminds me of like a saying in AA that they talk about. They'll say is like, I might get this wrong, but it's like something like basically don't have contempt prior to investigation. Like don't have your mind made up about something before you even investigate it. Like, because like you don't really know until you experienced it. And then until you experience it, then you can have like a more solid opinion on whether it's beneficial or not beneficial.
And Jordan Peterson has a very similar, it's saying the same thing in different words, but he's also very much, I think that's one of those universalisms that's so true. And I think it's so true because I think it's very much human nature not to do that and to make up your mind before you've investigated, or never to investigate at all, just to have an opinion on everything, right? For whatever reason, I think that's something we have to fight against as humans, because that's our natural inclination. It's just to think we know, or maybe it's just the insecurity of not knowing things that we're so programmed just to pretend we know it, even if we don't, because that's such a scary place to be that insecure of the guy that doesn't know, right? You never want to be that guy. Even if you have to pretend that you know, right? How many times a week do you do that? I mean, I do this all the time. Someone brings something up in conversation, you kind of, yeah, even though you have no idea. They say, oh, have you heard of this guy? Like, I do that all the time, and I'm trying to catch myself with it, because I know That doesn't serve you. That's an opportunity for you to learn, right? If you would have said, no, sorry, I don't know that. Can you explain who it is? I come out of that with more knowledge. But that little piece of pain to just go through that insecurity of admitting you don't know somebody is so stupid and silly in the grand scheme of things. But I find myself doing it all the damn time. I don't know what that is.
I've sometimes I do that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm more so I do my best to just, if I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's a lot of things I don't know now.
Yeah.
But
and the more you do know, the more you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the cosmic joke of it all, is the more knowledge you get, the more you realize, holy shit, we don't know much.
I was thinking about something you said about like relating back to dance, about you dancing and how it ripples out and stuff. And I was thinking about how like it does ripple out because like it does build like a certain level of confidence, right? Like, and then that bleeds out into other things, like confidence to, whether that's like to not care what people think, or, you know, the confidence just to be yourself.
Yeah.
And then like relating this all back to like what the first topic about pound makers is like, I think that's something that, for myself, like, with being like, I feel like I'm more of like a symbol of what's possible when I'm at Pound Makers working there, because like one of the things, like I'm more able to be myself and show that like if an addict sees me, they can see like, oh, like I'm a generally pretty calm, like happy dude now. And they see that that's like, well, that's possible for them to be like happy in sobriety. Yeah. And like with the dancing thing, like playing guitar and stuff, because that's some of the things I'll share is like how like I just started playing guitar when I got sober, and that's something I didn't really know I could do, and was whatever, and had all these judgments about it, and I worked through it. And then that connecting it back to like what you're saying about dance, it's like it sounds like it's like, you know, it's a practice, right? Like the first time you do it, or the first time I've played guitar or sang or danced, it's like I felt pretty uncomfortable with it, right? Yeah. And I wasn't very graceful, and but every time I did it again more and more, it's like doing reps, like in the gym, right? And it's like it's practice, and then eventually it becomes like there's that, I think in psychology it's like unconscious competence, conscious competence, or no, unconscious competence, or I fucked that up.
I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
But basically, eventually, it becomes unconscious. Yeah. At the end result, the more you do it, it becomes like natural, second nature, right? And
I think guitar is one of the best examples of that, because I'm not sure where, I haven't heard you play in a while, so I don't know what place you are, but I play guitar too. And one of the biggest things I was learning of how much of it is unconscious. And I remember thinking like certain things, do you know what hammer-on and pull-offs are? Yeah. So hammer-ons and pull-offs were something like I could never wrap my head around. Every time I would be around somebody that knew guitar more than me, I'd always ask them about like, how do I get better with hammer-ons and pull-offs? And they kind of tell me, you know what, it's just something like sometimes you'll find songs where it'll be in it and they'll show you when to do it, and you can just learn that way. But like if you want to learn just when to, because what I want to know is like, how do I just know when to make add more flavor to a song by just doing it naturally, right? And like, how do I know when to do it and stuff? And they just say, it's just going to happen at some point. You're just going to, and I'm like, bullshit. Like that's not me. Cause I have this idea in my head of, I'm not a musician. I know how to copy, right? I know how to read the chords and I know where the chords go, but I don't feel like I understand, because I don't know how to read music. I don't understand those things. So I just thought that's never going to be me. I'm never going to figure that out. But then a couple years into playing guitar, I would just find every once in a while I was doing little hammer-ons and little pull-offs and adding a little flair to the chords that I was playing. Completely unconscious. I have no idea. And now I probably do it too much, because I learn so much. I hammer on and pull off every fucking chord, and I do it all the time. And that's very much a part of like my musical identity of how I play guitar. That's very central to it. Like even people that have no guitar knowledge ever, like, and have a lot of, I don't know if it's embarrassment about it, but I think I know that it's a bit of, when I'm doing those things, it's a bit of showing off, right? Like you're almost showing off your skills at it. And one person in university, one of my good friends called me on it one time, like, oh, and you're always doing all that fancy shit, right? And it just hit, you know, when somebody says like just a little comment, nobody else in the room hears, but it just hits you in the heart and just sinks your stomach, like, fuck, you're so right. Like you sunk my battleship. Oh man. Like, and just like hearing that, but it's like, and being embarrassed about it. But then now looking back on that, who fucking cares? Sure, it's showing off a bit, but like playing guitar, like other than the joy it gives you, which it very much is innate, and like I feel like it's hard to explain to people the joy of learning something like guitar gives you, of just the the progression and the skill progression of it. But like another piece of it is to show off at least a little bit,
pride,
right?
Like
yeah, to have pride in it.
You feel proud that like, look, like I worked a lot. I put a lot of work into
exactly.
This was hard, and now I can do it.
And people mistake the pride for the skills and what you're doing in the moment. But the pride for me is, I have pride in the years of sitting at home annoying my whole family by fucking up at this, like that, and that's what it is, right? And that's I equate this to fighters a lot too. They always talk about everyone sees this one moment. Like if you're an active fighter, you maybe fight twice a year, and people see these big moments and you get all these accolades for it. But what that is it's not the accolades there for. It's not for what happened for 15 minutes or 25 minutes in that cage, or less, I guess, in that cage that night. It is the decades of work of wrestling in the gym when nobody knows your name and all that stuff. Like that's what it's about. And as long as you yourself know that you have pride in the right things, you have pride in the work that you put in, and it's not the superficial type of pride. And again, that's that ability to check in with yourself and be honest with yourself to see where you are on that path and what it is. As long as you're good with that, it doesn't matter what other people think, right? It doesn't matter if people think you're showing off. If you know that it comes from a good place inside and you're honest with yourself.
Yeah.
That's what matters at the end of the day. And I think that's just so tough for people because people are so out of touch with themselves that they wouldn't even know where to start to ask those types of questions, right? Like,
yeah.
So how long have you played guitar now?
I think I've been playing, like, I got more serious in it probably the last like 5 months. I think. Yeah. Oh. But I picked it up when I first got sober. So I first bought a guitar when I was 24. 23, and then I just kind of like picked it up and then would put it down, pick it up, put it down.
That's very much a part of the guitar journey. That was the same with me. When I first started playing, I played all the time in university. I played quite a bit. Then I graduated, and for the past 4 years, I probably played more in the last month than I've played in the last 4 years put together. And it's been so much fun to pick it back up, and I'm loving guitar right now. This is why that's actually one of the things I had written down to talk about today was guitar, because I had it written from our last time that we didn't get to it, but it's just such a fun experience. And so I think it's one of the things, and it's funny that I'm getting into jiu-jitsu now because I'm seeing so much of the same things with jiu-jitsu that I was in guitar, because it's humbling for everybody. Learning guitar is humbling. You think you have this idea in your head of like, well, I'll get it, but there's just certain things that just take time until you grind that out and you learn the muscle memory in your left hand, or I guess your right hand, the other hand, but your chord hand. That is going to be maybe different for most people, but there's a certain base level of you're going to have to suck at this for a while, and it's going to be frustrating and it's going to suck, and then you're going to get good at it and it's going to feel good, and then there's going to be another thing. It's going to be that same thing. It's bar chords. I don't know how you wrote bar chords yet.
I haven't really even
dove into them. Yeah. So
I could do a couple, but
yeah, exactly. You usually starts with an F. You can get the F down, and then you can move to some other ones, right? But that's a whole nother door once you get those down. But that's a whole other thing. You finally get these basic chords down, and you think, oh, I'm over this hump, right? But then bar chords are the next thing, right? And then once you figure those out, it's hammer-ons and pull-offs. There's always a next thing with guitar that just seems absolutely mysterious to you until somehow you eventually figure it out, right? And it almost is this weird process of just saying, I'm never going to get this. Hey, I got this. And then and then there's a new thing. Oh, I'll never get this. Oh, hey, I got this, right? And now going into jiu-jitsu, I've just listened to so many podcasts about what the first 6 months of jiu-jitsu is like, and just you're going to get humbled. So I'm so prepared for this of going into it, but I can see that if I hadn't had all that prep, I would be so disheartened and just going in there and just getting stomped on by these people that are way smaller than you, that, they've only been doing jiu-jitsu 6 months, but you have 0 months. And that is a world of difference. That is so different. And you think like, man, I outweigh this guy by 30 pounds. He's only has 6 months more training on me, and he can do whatever he wants to me. And that is just, and I feel like if I wouldn't have had that preparation for that, knowing that going in, that'd be really tough on my ego. Right. And, but going into it, knowing that, I laughed the whole time. So yesterday at my first jiu-jitsu class, or my first gi jiu-jitsu class, we're doing takedowns, and I'm looking around the class for the newest guy. Right. Because not out of ego or anything, but my biggest thing is I feel so bad. I don't want to wreck anybody else's time. I don't want them to go with me because I'm so new. I don't know things. Like I'm really passionate about it and I want to learn, but I don't want to slow down their stuff. So I find this older guy, he's probably 65, 70, right? And thick Russian accent, and just start bullshitting. You want to go partners, right? So we're doing these takedowns, and he goes, oh, I know stand up. I do judo, I do sambo, 18 years, I got stand up. You just do, right? So I'm trying to do it to him, right? And he's giving me lots of tips, and it's hard with the language barrier, but then he goes, you want me to show you some throws? I go, sure. And he chucks me. Like I am ass over tea kettle in the air, like hip tosses all over. And I'm laughing my sack off because it's just so funny to be like, I'm not embarrassed that this is happening. Like clearly this is what it should be. I should be getting tossed by this guy. And it's so funny just to feel the vulnerability of like, I know nothing. Like if this guy wanted to hurt me, he could mangle me right now. But instead of being angry about that or embarrassed about that, it's just like, this is fun. This is enjoying. Like, this is so cool. Hopefully I get to do this one day to other people. Right. And it was just, and same thing when we're rolling, I'm getting choked out or I get arm barred or whatever. Every time I'm laughing. I find it so funny when this happens, but I equate that to having the good prep going in, because I think if I didn't, knowing myself and how much I usually struggle with not being good at things, I would hate that and I would get mad. And that's what they talk about, people getting hurt because they get so frustrated at the start that they go too hard and then you piss off the guy that's rolling with it. You're trying to be nice, but because I go into it with just a happy, laid back kind of attitude, the people I'm rolling with kind of match that. And then they start to teach you and they start to learn. And I find you get so much more flies with honey than with vinegar, right? Or whatever that saying is. I just find it's interesting. And I wish I almost looking back, I wish I would have had somebody that would have given me all those lessons, but with guitar, like, hey, be ready for this. This is going to suck. Be ready for this. This is going to suck. Cause then you go into it and you're prepared for it. Where when I started guitar, it was just me and YouTube and figuring this out on my own. Right. And it was very frustrating and lonely at times, but also on the flip side of that, the wins were so much bigger because nobody helped me with this. I figured this out on my own. This bar chord, nobody showed me how to. I learned this on my own, right? So it was it was a weird balance, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. Just being able to hop back into it and pick guitar up again and start playing again. Oh, that is just so much fun, especially because it's been a hard month and I've been through lots of shit, and just to have that. You don't realize it's a tool, right? It's a mental health tool just to hop in there and forget everything, right? And just kind of play for a bit and just get into the flow of that is so nice, just to be able to turn the world off in a healthy way, right? I think a lot of people turn to, maybe alcohol or drugs to kind of get that feeling of turning the world off for a minute. And I think you can find that in healthier ways. And something like guitar is that for me. And I'm hoping eventually jujitsu gets that. It's right now, it's not that at all. It's just getting smashed. But I think eventually if you got good at it, it'd be another one of those things where you just go in, you roll, and you just have fun and you turn the world off for a bit and you're just enjoying that unconscious competence, right?
Right. Yeah. I want to get into jiu-jitsu too. That sounds fun. Yeah.
It's so much fun.
I have boxing training, and it seems like everything like that in life is like that, eh? Like there's like, I think I don't know if it's Japanese or Chinese but there's like a philosophy called the way, like learning the way or whatever. And that's the way is like, getting the different
Miyamoto
experience.
Musashi.
Yeah. It's, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's even like relating that back to like, that concept to like addiction and recovery, like sobriety and stuff. It's kind of similar to that too. Like there's people in recovery who have years of recovery. Yeah. And you can look at them and you're like, that person's really calm, and like that person doesn't really struggle. Like you could talk to them, like for example, even like a new addict will talk to me and they're saying like, I'm having these cravings and stuff. And for me, I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't have any cravings. Like, I don't want to drink. I just don't want to.
But you're in a different place.
I'm in a completely different, but like when I first started getting sober, I remember the first 2 years, like, man, it was a struggle. Like I'd go on Snapchat and I would see someone, I get that fear of missing out. Someone would post something about drinking, right? And I'd see that and I'd start to feel like I'd get a real rank craving, and it would last like all day. And I'd just be fighting with myself, like, oh man, like I just want to go out, I want to go party and this and that. I was like, but if I do, it's just gonna go turn shitty. So, and then like over time, over years of doing my step work and doing that inner work and doing all the ceremonies and all the different things I did to
heal the wounds,
and work on self-development and inner work and all that stuff. It got me to a place now where it's like, I don't struggle with cravings anymore. Like it'll pop through my mind like once or twice a year where like, oh, beer would be nice, but it's not like where I'm like white knuckling it and I'm just like sitting there like just struggling. And I see like new clients and new addicts and they're in that stage and I'm like, holy man, like I remember when it was like that. And that's one of the things I'll say to them. It's like, like it takes practice. It takes time. It takes practice, it takes going, like reading the literature and doing the exercises that you need to do, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, to get to a place where you don't crave anymore. You don't struggle, or you find new coping mechanisms like jujitsu or playing guitar or running or meditation or like the different things that I do now, like the cold therapy and like, one of the things I messaged you earlier about was, psilocybin mushrooms. Like that's something that I do once or twice a year. Yeah. And I've microdosed occasionally. And that's something that I find for me, like, I don't, like, some people will see that as like, well, you're still using, like,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
that you're still using a substance to change your emotional state or whatever. But for me, like, I don't see it that way, because I don't see myself as having a problem with it that I did with alcohol and cocaine. Right.
Right.
So it's like, I see those as tools for my recovery. But like, what I was getting back to is like, in treatment, like, yeah, that's how I see myself, is like, kind of like that older guy in, with your jiu-jitsu, the old, you said he's 75 or whatever.
It's 70, 65.
Yeah,
no, ageless Russian guy. Right? He could have been 40 for all I know. Who knows? Yeah.
And so,
And
I think that's kind of how it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's only going to grow, right? Your experience and your wisdom that you've already gained is only going to grow in the future. And you might feel like that old man now, but then probably in 10 years from now, you're going to look back at, like, you might listen to this conversation and be like, oh, you thought you knew something now. Like, you're just a little white belt at that point of what knowledge you have, or maybe a blue belt, whatever you want to equate it to. Because that journey never stops, and that wisdom and how far along that path is never ending, right? There's always people going to be out ahead of you on that path. There's always going to be people behind you, and just to be conscious of that and not get too caught up in where you are, because it doesn't really matter. Everyone's on that same path, and everyone's, going at their own pace and that.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I love that. That's like, I think that's one of the challenging things about life, is like accepting one's capabilities and limitations. Like, we all have limitations, and we all have capabilities and potential, but accepting that, it seems like it's a challenging thing, because it's really easy to like compare. Because like, one of the things, like, there's been people who've told me like you're an intelligent guy, and like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't think I'm very intelligent, because like, I know intelligent people. Like, I've had conversations with people who would have like genius IQs, right? Like, very intelligent people.
Yeah.
And then that's what I see as an intelligent person. It's really easy to compare myself and be like, no, like, that person is intelligent.
Right.
And then kind of feel shitty about myself. But it's a different thing to feel like, okay, no, that person's intelligent, but I still accept myself.
Right.
And I still I am what I am, and I'm doing the best that I can with what I got and what resources I have and what capabilities I have, and I can still love myself and not compare myself to this person or that person or this person.
Yeah.
But then there's that healthy comparing too, I think.
For sure. And that's that same balance of that. How much do you let that inner critic and the comparison and that fuel you? And it's the same thing where you have to use it as much as it serves you, and rein it in when it doesn't, right? And being healthy in your comparisons, and comparing for the right reasons, and being conscious of it, of when you are you choosing to compare? Is it an automatic reflex that your body is doing to make you feel something? Because I think a lot of times too, people get caught into ruts, or ruts, not, it's almost like feedback loops of they're so used to this feeling of sometimes people can get addicted to a bad feeling too, because it's just, and they know, you know what, I know, and it's not even conscious. This is why it's hard to explain, right? Like, subconsciously, they are used to this feeling. They're addicted to this feeling of pain, and they know what brings it up is that comparison. So now, are you actively trying to compare yourself to improve yourself, or is this an unconscious feedback loop that is making you feel some things that is bringing you down? That, like, is it serving you, or is it not serving you, right? And it's so hard to parse those things out, because people don't want to sit in those conversations and ask that of themselves. Like, is this serving me? Is this, or usually it's just something that doesn't even come up to them. They wouldn't even know to ask that question, right? Like, that's the tougher part of the whole thing, is so much of this is framed within the reference of knowledge that I know both me and you have, right? But so many people don't even have any of this. Like, they have no base to start off of to even, understand these concepts, or even like a base understanding of just psychology, right? Like, when I took Psych 101 and 102, or whatever the first two psychs are in university, it was like, why are we not teaching this to everybody? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, just the thought that we're walking through a society of 8 billion people, and we don't have just this most basic understanding of how our brains work, and the alleviation of anxiety and so many things that would create, just to bring that base level of knowledge of how we work up a level, right? And then what I found is then listening to podcasts like Lex Friedman and all these guys that have these amazing psychologists and not even psychologists, but just like these actual scientists that study the brain and how it works, and our understanding of like the base populace level understanding of how the brain works is like 3 theories behind. of we have learned so much about how the mind works, but we're still stuck back of like in this, we have this like trireme brain theory of like kind of like the conscious brain, the lizard brain, and like the kind of the in-between.
Right.
That was like four understandings ago of where we are now, and we still could be completely wrong with it. It's just the best guess we have right now, because the mind is this amazing, mysterious thing we might never understand. But that's just amazing to me that I got to see of learning these new understandings of how the brain works. And when you hear them, it's like, oh my, like the best one I can recommend to people, if they listen to Lisa Feldman Barrett. She's a Canadian born scientist. She's now in the States working at one of the big universities, but she's one of the leading people on the brain. She was on Lex Fridman's, and the actual like actionable gains that I got from that understanding of how the brain works, because it's so true. And when you hear it, it's like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And like when she equates it to stuff, my understanding of walking through the world, I felt like I was way more intelligent. I understood things better. I understood people better. I understood why things happen much better. And it was like, if I could take that, like, I feel like just listening to one conversation, that leveled me up like 6 levels. Like, I'm just being arbitrary, but I was just like, man, how is this information here? And we're not like, it just blows my mind that people aren't itching for it, but they don't know. I guess, how do you itch for it if you don't know what's there? If you've never experienced that. But it just blows my mind that we're so, everybody is so sure of what we know. And really, we know so little. Like it's so funny, man. Like,
yeah, that's what's weird about the mind and about life. I was thinking about like how even just like watching you play guitar on like you post some things on Instagram, and like even that's something that just inspired me to like, want to play guitar more.
That's awesome.
Right? So it's like, I think that's like that healthy comparison. That healthy. Same thing with other people. People doing certain things. There was something you said that triggered a whole bunch of thoughts. I noticed the way we talk, kind of, we're open-minded people, I think. So we go off in so many trails, right? So many directions. We'll talk about one thing and it'll take us down one path.
That's why I like having this notebook. I should get you a notebook too, so you can write things down. Because that's what I have. That's what's so hard for me in conversations. Staying on track and understanding when is it good to take it down tangent, or should I just write this down and see if we got back to it later, of knowing that balance of when. Because like I said, if I just let my mind, you know this, right? Like if I just let I'll go way off on the deep end. And it doesn't matter if there's someone like you, where what's nice about doing a conversation with someone like you, Cody, is it doesn't matter where it goes, because I know you'll go there with me. But for them, this is very rare. That's why I'm bugging you all the time to get you back on the podcast, right? Like once a week bugging, because it's such a fun experience for me, because this is exactly what I want. But I would say more often than not, it's not that. And the person sitting across from me is confident to talk about subjects in a bubble that they're confident in. And if it gets outside that bubble, they're trying to kind of steer it back in, because they're a little bit unsure of where the conversation go. Maybe it might fall into an area where they're uncomfortable. I don't know what it is, but it feels like most of the time when I'm talking to somebody, they're always trying to kind of keep it into one similar vein. And that's very opposite of what I like to go all over the place and just see where it goes. And then I find the depths of, if you take off all the constraints like that and just let it go, you go way deeper into these subjects, and you can kind of back and forth. Like I taught, like kind of exactly how I started off of what I was thanking you for the last time. And we're already doing it again this time, but it's very rare. That is like, I'd say out of 100 podcasts now or ish that I've recorded, like that's maybe 1 in 10, right? That it's that willing, right? Like I think the very first one, and it really surprised me, was Chad Paulson from Slave Dog Island Brewing.
Right.
And I play hockey with him and stuff, and didn't know him all that well. And I think he was maybe like the 8th or 9th podcast, and I was really excited about them, and it was really good stuff, but kind of how I envisioned it in my head, the way the conversation would go, and just the passing back and forth, and it doesn't matter where you go, people hopping in with you. That's what I was prepared for. And when it wasn't, I was thinking, oh, this is just me. I'll get better as a podcast host, and then I'll be able to bring whoever sits in front of me. We can have that type of conversation. But I was kind of losing hope of just, man, like maybe I'm not as good as I thought. But then I hopped on with Chat, and he was so laid back and open and willing to go wherever the conversation went, and was just, it really gave me confidence. And then that feedback's because I think then he felt my confidence of feeling that I was into it. And that gave me confidence for a whole bunch of episodes past that of, no, I do have this skill. It's gonna, my skill set will be applied differently depending on who's in front of me, but it is there. And when I have a guest, and that was when it really kicked in high gear, because when you sat in front of me for the first time on episode 30 or whatever it was, that's when I was like, oh, I really have a skill at this. Like when someone's willing to go to rally and to go to the depths of these conversations, I can go there. And it was so, that gave me tons of confidence going forward to know that I have that. And I'm only going to have more guests of that type of mindset, right? Like eventually I'm going to have Aubrey Marcus on this podcast and we can go really, really deep, right? Like,
awesome,
but to know that in myself of, I'm just working on my skill set and I want to be able to pull that out of everybody, or at least get close to that with everybody.
Yeah.
That's something I can work on. And until then, it's just it's a really fun time to get to do something like this. But I also don't hold anything against if it's not that. And I don't want to hold expectations for that, because you know what, I think if I went in expecting every podcast to be like a Cody Twinn podcast, I think I'd be pretty upset, right? Like I think I'd be setting myself up for failure.
You might trip out all your audience too.
Calling everybody Cody. Right?
No, yeah. I know. I think you're a good interviewer. Like I think you're good at this podcast. So,
I appreciate that.
I like the way it's formatted and the way you ask questions and the way you talk and stuff. Like you're intelligent.
I appreciate that.
Open-minded, and you're an interesting dude.
I think that too, but it's a weird thing to think, because it's like, I've spent so much of my life trying to fight back from the biggest parts of that big ego, because that was in such control for so many years that it's a weird feeling to kind of give it with the podcast. I almost have to give into that side a little bit, but right. Almost 24 years of my life was designed in keeping that ego as constrained as possible, right? And just fighting against it all the time, right? Because I knew that was in there and I was very embarrassed of it, right? Because I don't want to let that out. And what I hated was when I get drunk, it would come out and I'd be bragging. And everyone I talk to say, Nick, you're the friendliest drunk. You're not like this. But the way I see myself when I'm drunk is I talk myself up. It's just so, it makes me just cringe to see who I am when I'm drunk, right? And that's why when I found marijuana, I loved it, because it brought out the better side of myself, where I would have love for all those pieces of myself, but I wouldn't be grandiose about it. And I feel like it balanced me out a lot. And I feel like, just liquor wasn't, and I still enjoy it from time to time. And there's a time and a place for it, and I still can enjoy it, but I really don't think it'll ever be the same as what it used to be for me. Like, I don't think I'll ever go back to that. But in saying that, it's a weird experience with this podcast of kind of going back a different direction of believing in myself that I have something to say and that I am intelligent, I am interesting, and people are going to want to hear me. That was so antithetical to who I was growing up with my dad, of be humble, don't show off, right? You see this car beside us, this Mercedes, Ingo drove it like none in slave, like, because he didn't want people to see him with it, right? Like that's who he is. And that's what I was brought up with, of this humble mentality. And to try and switch out of that is very weird for me. And it's a good learning experience. I feel like it's teaching me a lot, but it's just kind of almost like the ultimate test for myself of like, I had 24 years of just fighting with my ego, keeping it caged. And then I went to this process of, okay, I don't need to cage me. I need to work with it. I need to love it. I need to let it serve me when it serves me, and let it not serve, and almost letting it out of the cage and be like, holy shit, this could go sideways here. But also keeping it caged up is caging myself, and that's keeping me back from my abilities. And now I've got it out of the cage. It's walking with me. It's on the leash. It's coming everywhere I go, and I'm trying to use it when I can and keep it in check. Yeah. And it's a very different dynamic that I'm just now learning kind of how to walk with, kind of, and how to be in that space. Yeah.
Well, like to not like fall into perfectionism, right? To try to make everything perfect.
That too.
Like being easy on things, like how just going with the flow, going with the flow. Yeah. In a sense, like having that humble confidence. Like being confident, but not cocky. Not cocky. Yeah. And that's a line that I even struggle with sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes I'm not always sure if, like, cause sometimes there'll be the odd person that will be like, oh, you're full of yourself, or, oh, you got a big head or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like wondering, am I actually having a big head, or am I actually deadly, or am I just being confident? Yeah. And they're feeling insecure around me. Exactly. Like being able to discern what it is, whether they're just taking jabs because they see me as like someone who's walking around confident, but they don't like that.
Yeah. And confidence is the most threatening thing to people who aren't confident. Yeah. Right. That's why you see people like Conor McGregor or Sugar Sean O'Malley that are just these hyper confident, alpha male, like fighter types. And that rubs so many people the wrong way. You can see it. Just that is that is poison to people who aren't confident. When you see a confident, and something about, not to take this down different, but something about a confident man to other men is very threatening. And I think, but that puts you in a weird place when you are that confident person, because now you're getting all this, like almost confrontational energy all the time from a thing that you want to have value. Like you want to have value in your confidence and see it as a good thing. But the the messaging that you're getting out in the world is that this is a bad thing, right? And I think that's what created that inner critic that we talked about at the start. I think that's what that created in me, because I knew I was cocky, right? And I would always be on the lookout for that cocky, and that inner critic was what balanced out that cockiness, because I always thought I was fucking just the deadliest, right? So, right? So then I would always in my head be like, no, everything you do is shit. You're garbage, right? That inner hatred would almost balance that out. And that would be that roller coaster I was riding my whole life until I kind of made that change. But like the ego was so huge that my self-hatred almost was what balanced that out. But now what I'm trying to do is have self-love for myself and bring that to the middle so that I can find where on that spectrum, right? I think that's what's doing that side of finding the self-love is now being able to let that ego out of the cage and find this times of where is that line of confidence and where is that line of cockiness, where before I was so scared of it altogether that I wouldn't even worry about the confidence. I was so scared of the cocky that I would have this self-hatred mechanism to balance it out. So I never came across as that cocky, right? Because that was the ultimate thing growing up, as be humble, be kind, be all these things. Like that was antithetical to everything I was being shown as valued, right? So then I would come up with this idea in my head of this, just this self-hatred, but then I wasn't realizing in the time all the negative manifestations that living that life brings. And until you start to correct those and start to love yourself, you don't see those things, right? And the biggest thing I found that manifest was in relationships. Living that life of not loving yourself when you're trying to love someone else was a recipe for disaster. And I couldn't realize it at the time, but now looking back on every relationship I had prior to this last one, I was just a mess. I was all the insecurity, all the like madness and not loving myself, and it was destined to fail, right? There was no way any of those things could have ever gone further than what they did, right? Like they were destined to fail from day one because of my mindset. And to look back on that now, be able to laugh at it a little bit is good, but I think for a long time I just didn't understand what was going wrong, like, because in my head who wouldn't be happy to be with me, right? Like that ego of like, I'm an amazing person. I'm kind. I'm funny. I love, like, I feel like my ability to love, how big I can love, how much I can love is one of my biggest things that I value. I love hard. Like I have a lot of love to give for everybody, right? For my friends, for people. But if you're going to be that person, my person, you're going to get a lot of love. And I say, who would not want that? So it was so hard for me to understand, like, how could someone, like, every time I've been broken up with in my life, I've just been so like rocking to the core of like, man, someone wouldn't want to be with me, right? Which is so icky just to say out loud and on a podcast, right? But that was it. But it was because I couldn't see all this other stuff of like, now when I look back on it, I was like, oh, I wouldn't want to be with me. Look who I was. I was so insecure. Like I was so insecure with myself that I was questioning, oh, every guy they're hanging out with, or, are you going out? What are you doing at night? Like because I was so insecure about myself and who I was, right? Like I thought, who wouldn't want to be with me, but who would want to be with me? Whereas now, that I actually, what I thought I believed then, I do believe it now. Like I love myself. Like I'm still working on loving myself more and being more fully encompassing that. But compared to where I was, I love myself amazingly. Right. And now in this last relationship, I could see that. And I'm still a very jealous guy in that, but like my jealousy in this last relationship was so much lower because I was so much more confident in myself. And when you got to see that one-to-one reaction of how confident you are in yourself to how insecure you are with other guys, it really shines a light on it. And you can look back on the other relationships and go, man, you were an idiot. Like that was so just you being insecure about yourself if you would have been. And that's what pushes girls away or the opposite sex away, is if you aren't confident in yourself, right? Because you're just sending them a message of you don't think you're good enough for them, right? Like,
I think at some level, like a person can feel that, right? Like whether intuitively or unconsciously or even consciously, but there's a sense of it.
Yeah.
Like I can relate to a lot of that stuff, a lot of the stuff you've said there. Like, I was just thinking about, like, in one of the books I've read, Five Agreements and Mastery of Love, there's by Don Miguel or Ruiz. And he kind of talks about like a relationship, like the relationship you're in with somebody is a reflection of how you feel about yourself. So like, if you don't love yourself very much, it's going to manifest in your, like, in how the partners you pick, or if you have a high tolerance for self-abuse, you'll accept a certain amount of abuse from that person. Yeah. But you'll never accept more abuse than you abuse yourself. Yeah. And like, if you really love yourself, then,
you don't take shit.
You're more likely to like have a partner that will, treat you well. Yeah. Like you won't tolerate abuse, and you'll receive a lot of their love, kind of thing. Yeah. And vice versa, I think. So I don't know. I was just thinking about, like, for me in my past relationships, like I didn't really love myself. but I thought I did.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I identified with my ego and this character that I built up.
Yeah.
And I was like trying to be this character. And
yeah. Whoa. Fuck.
Yeah. And
I hear exactly what you're saying.
When I was trying to be this character, like it was weird because I call it pretending and acting now.
Yeah.
I wasn't really conscious of it in my past. Whereas like, so my conscience, so I was trying to play this character, be this character, and my conscience would tell me like, no, you're not this.
Yeah.
But I would ignore my conscience. I'd be like, no, like I am this.
Yeah.
I'm going to be who I want to be. I'm going to create who I am. And when I would get into a relationship with the opposite sex, a female, and she would like appear to like me, like who I was presenting myself as, she would say, if she said she loved me, or I like you, or you're attractive, or you're these things, these positive attributes. Inside, I was like, at some level, I was feeling like, well, I'm fucking pretending and I'm acting. So like who they're loving isn't actually who I actually am deep down. So
that love doesn't connect.
Yeah. It doesn't, it doesn't never hit my soul.
Yeah,
like
exactly. It never, doesn't penetrate fully. Like
no, because it's like,
it hits the armor that you built up and doesn't actually make it down to the heart.
Exactly. And that's what I noticed, because for me, like I'd be in these relationships and it didn't matter how many times they said, I love you, those words, like I was never satisfied, and I could never get like that feeling that I was looking for. Yeah. It was like a short-term pleasure dopamine thing where it would fill my ego, and my ego would be like, yeah, I'm the fucking shit.
Yeah.
Like I'm sexy, and this girl likes me and she wants to fuck me and whatever, you know? But it would only feed that part. And that part was always like, could never be satisfied.
It's not fully nourishing.
It's not nourishing. And but my soul was like being malnourished.
Yeah. And
I think like for me, that's why I was always like, I was like very narcissistic in my thinking, especially when I was younger. Cause I always, like if I walked into a room, I wanted every girl to notice that I was there. Yeah. Like I wanted them to play with their hair, you know, give me those eyes, and like I wanted their attention to be on me. And I felt like I needed that like fuel. Like I needed that like food. Like I needed them to be interested in me or attracted to me. And then I would find a girl that was either giving me signals, and I would go for them. And then if I can get them to like sleep with me or be with me or whatever, then I'd be like, okay, so if they find me desirable, well, then I must be desirable, and I must love myself. Like I must be lovable, because this person's saying they love me. So I must be a lovable person. And I needed them to validate my own self-esteem, because I couldn't like validate my own self-esteem. Like I couldn't validate my own self. I couldn't, like I wasn't at a place in my life where I really loved who I was. So I was like, well, I'll just be this person, and they love that person, and I can keep them around that way. And that makes me appear valuable or desirable or whatever. So it was like a weird thing for me where, and there were times when I knew that's what was going on with me, but I just wasn't healthy enough to fully understand that, like, no, like I'm traumatized, and like I'm bullshit. I'm fooling myself. And like my conscience would always give me little nudges and be like, you're not being truthful. This relationship is based on lies that you've created. And like you're never going to feel happy, because I would feel depressed, and I wouldn't, I would do my best not to show it. And then that's when I would use alcohol and drugs and stuff and try to numb it away. And, the different type of lies that I would tell myself to protect me from my actual truth. But my truth, like eventually it came out. And like leading back to those psilocybin mushrooms, like that was one of the things that it was like fucking wild, man. It was like because I did a large dose of magic mushrooms psilocybin mushrooms when I was like, I think I was like maybe a year or 2 years clean from alcohol and cocaine. And I did, the first time I did 6 grams. Ooh. And I had this experience, and it was the scariest experience in my entire life. I've never felt so much fear and like so many negative feelings in the first hour of the experience. Yeah. But what I noticed for me, why that was because however that works. Like I am not a neuroscientist, or I'm not a psychiatrist, or none of that. I'm not like a specialist in these molecules and how they work with the brain. But for me, what it did was it seemed to like pull me out of my ego or something, or like dissolved my ego, and it pulled me like my consciousness or my awareness or something outside of my body and my ego. But then it gave me a bird's eye view of all the ways that I'm fucking full of shit, all the ways I lie to people, all the ways I'm manipulative,
all that programming, all those narratives.
All those narratives
laid out in front of you.
Why I do things, because like one of the things I call it the mushroom. The mushroom was telling me like, or whether that's my subconscious, I don't know. It's some intelligence.
There's a bunch of different theories on it, right? And I believe in a lot of them, but I know a lot of people don't. But it doesn't matter what you call it. I can only share my experience, right? That's all, because that's all I know. Because I don't know a lot about it. But for me, this experience, and that's what it did. It was like it showed me myself, and it really showed me where my blinders are on, like where I'm not willing to look, like where I'm willfully ignorant, like where I'm choosing to ignore my conscience, where I'm just being unhealthy. And it showed me that. And then once I saw, I couldn't unsee it. It gave me that awareness, and I was like, holy, and that's why it was like, they would, like a regular person would probably say like, oh, you were having a bad trip. And the way I see it is like, I was like, I don't think, no, it wasn't a bad trip. It was a difficult trip.
It was a difficult, challenging trip, because I was seeing things that I was doing that weren't healthy. And once I was able to accept all of it and like surrender, like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is what happened. This is how I'm like, I'm being childish in this way, or I'm being unhealthy in this way. Okay. It is what it is. I can love it. I can,
that's exactly it.
Now that I love it. Now that I can see it, now I know I can do something about it.
Right.
And then, so like the rest of the experience was beautiful for me. And I felt like very like wise, and I felt just like having insights about things, and just really like a lot of self-awareness, introspection. It taught me those psilocybin mushrooms taught me a lot about myself. And I'm not telling people to go do these, because they're not for everybody.
Everybody's different. And
everybody's different. And like,
but there's millions and millions and millions of people that can tell that exact same story about how it changed their life, and what that did for them, and what realizations and what changes that they made in their own life due to that. Right. Like, and that's
exactly. And I don't really know if how I see it is, I think what it did is it gave me awareness of my inner life, and like how my inner life affects my external life. And it gave me the awareness of my inner life. So then I don't know if it necessarily changed me in my inside or like internally, but it did give me awareness, more awareness, which gave me the awareness to see, okay, this is where I got to change. And then that will like manifest in the external world. So my external world didn't change, but the way I saw the external world changed, because I saw like where my blinders were off. Like, it's like I took my blinders off. I'm like, oh, this is what I'm not looking at. Now I can see it. Okay. Now I can make a change in that behavior, and that behavior will change in the external world. Right. But I had to see it internally first. And it's like, that's kind of how I see it, because it showed me where I need to change, but I didn't make those changes right away. Right. Like it took me like a good month or two after the experience to like integrate it and be like, what was that? Like, what was that? Like, I didn't realize that I wasn't listening to my conscience. I didn't realize that I'm like, the reason why I work out fucking 3 hours a day is because I just want to look strong, and I want to look big, and I want to be like attractive. Like, I'm not, there is one reason of doing it for health, but a lot of it is for purely aesthetics. And I was like, and what is like gigantic muscles? How does that serve me in my life, other than being attractive looking or appearing like that I can rip your head off or something, you know? But how much does that actually serve me in my day-to-day life? And how much happiness do I get from that, you know? Yeah. And like, for me, that's something that it showed for me. And I was like, wow, man, I eat a lot of food. I spend a lot of time in the gym burning off that kinetic energy that came from the food. And I was like, man, I put a lot of time into this. For what? For why? Yeah. And what am I getting out of it? Yeah. And that's kind of what those mushrooms kind of showed me like the whys of why my motives. Like
The motives when the ego's taken out of it.
yeah.
Or just highlights what pieces of the motivations are what parts of that is ego, what part of that is your true self, what parts of that.
Exactly.
And I think there's some real lessons there of looking at that, of when you say like it gave you this roadmap of, without all the blinders that you've built up of narratives and all the stuff in your ego, when you strip all that away, and allows you to see it clearly, right? It gives you insight. It's still on you to make all those changes and to believe in it, and to, because you easily could have, after that experience, written it off to, oh, that was just a bad trip, and not integrated it, went back into old patterns, and you could have ignored it, right? And that's on you. But it's giving you it's opening the door to a new path. You still got to walk through that, right? That door wasn't there before. That's the important thing though, because that door wasn't there before that mushroom trip, right? And that door was there after. And I think that's not that doesn't mean that that's an easy road, or that it's I feel like so many people look at these things like shortcuts and stuff, but hearing you tell that story, Cody, it feels so resonant to me in a different way, of what you just described in kind of one trip was almost like the first 2 years of finding marijuana for myself.
Right.
Of almost was the exact same thing, but just slowly over 2 years of just kind of, when I'm high, of thinking those things of what serves me in the ego, of like, almost, instead of showing everything at once of this is how it all lays out, it's just like, as I'm thinking like this thing through at work, or thinking back on old relationships, that was the tool that was opening the door, and stripping off all that ego stuff of that, and just seeing like, and allowing me to laugh at myself, and the comfortability to go to those dark spaces and ask, why did I do that? Why was I so insecure in those moments? And to do that work. And it's a tool, right? Like it can be abused just like anything else can be abused.
Oh, for sure.
But like, the tool that it was for me was just insanely helpful, and really changed who I am. And that was something that I really struggled with for the first, until just recently of with the podcast and with the job that I had. I couldn't talk about smoking weed and what that was to me. And it sounds so silly to talk about that, but that was a really impactful part of my life. It changed who I was. It is changing who I am, right? And I'm proud of that. And I want to give it its due, and I want to honor that. And I want to show people there's this crazy taboo that goes way back and is really deep with people, that they think that it's something that it's not. And I think that's with so many things. And I think our understanding of what addiction is changing that, because for so long our understanding of addiction was all put onto the molecule.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the person. It's this evil crack cocaine. That's what's doing all this stuff. And it's no conversation about, whoa, what is going on in that person's life? What are they running from? What situation are they where they want to lose themselves in this world and they want to escape, right? Like, not asking any of those questions about what have they been through, what traumas have they seen, right? And we got so built up to that, to demonize all these things, that now we're paying the price for this, because now there's these amazing tools like psilocybin, like marijuana, like ecstasy, like all these things that they're finding. What's the one? Ketamine, right? Ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Like, there's all these tools that are at our disposal, but due to nothing more than propaganda and taboo and narratives.
Just that stigma, right?
Stigma.
It's very
exactly.
stigmatized, right?
Mm-hmm. It's very stigma, and it's changing quickly because the results speak for themselves. Now that they're finally breaking through, and these studies are being done in universities, and they're saying like, holy shit, psilocybin has, like 3 to 4 times efficacy better than any other drug we've ever tried on PTSD. Holy shit, right?
Yeah,
like, holy man, MDMA assisted therapy for PTSD has, 10 times efficacy than our leading SSRIs and all this stuff. Holy shit. Right. Yeah. And the holy shits are happening, and it's great that it's changing, but it's still a slow process, right? We're still probably, a couple years away from having, it be not reachable, like available for people, right? And that's going to be starting in clinics, and they're going to be really controlled. But then a couple years after that, it'll get a little bit more, and these tools are going to be more democratized to more people. But it's so sad to watch when, and I can only speak from my one little, and it's the very, my toe is only in the water. The only drug I've ever done is weed, right? Like, I've never tried anything. I now have finally, after 6 years journey of trying to get mushrooms, I finally have some in my possession. So I can finally maybe have a similar experience to you, because I've done so much research, and I've looked into it, and I've wanted to do mushrooms for so long. But I always just said, like, I've told my friends that I know do them all the time, stuff like, hey, I'd really like to if you can get me some, and it just never worked out. But I never pressured it, right? I never put pressure on my buddies, like, hey, get me some fucking mushrooms. I just said, it's going to happen when it's going to happen. Right. And,
Yeah.
and I just never put it, I was just always like, I feel ready, but whenever the universe will tell me when I'm ready, right, mushrooms will come to me.
Exactly. And that's kind of like the philosophy that I go by is like, I've heard people say phrases like, sort of like the mushroom man will find you when you're ready, like when you're ready, or like to not, cause like, that's why I say like, I don't encourage people to go use these mushrooms, but I don't discourage them from them. I think that's a personal thing.
Does it call to you?
Does it call to you? And like, and that's kind of what it was for me. Cause when I was first getting clean, like those first 2 years, like I was struggling with depression, and I researched that these mushrooms have been used for thousands of years, and that my indigenous cultures use them in ceremonies and stuff. And that, there are a lot of potential benefits for people with depression and anxiety and all kinds of things. Right. So I did my own studying, and then, I just felt the calling. I just felt like there was something there for me, and whether it's a shortcut or whether it's not a shortcut, or whether it's just a part in my journey where a catalyst, or like, cause like, for me, it personally felt like it was like I did 10 years of therapy in 6 hours. And whether that's true or not, or whether that's just my imagination or just how I feel. But for me, that's
true to you.
It's true to me. Yeah. And it's like, that's all
that matters at the end of the day, really.
That's all that matters at the end of the day. And I mean, it sounds funny, right? Like, oh, I'm going to take some magic mushrooms and go heal.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's not the common narrative right now. It's like, you take mushrooms to go have fun and get fucked up.
It's not the common narrative, except with people that have ever tried mushrooms.
That have tried them.
Exactly. So there's this huge narrative of people that have never done them before, that are the leading experts that are setting the narrative of what people think of it, have never tried them, have no idea what they are, right? They have an idea in that, which is so funny to me once I realized that, because I was the other way. I was the biggest anti-drug guy. I remember getting in a blowout fight with Logan LaValle over weed when we were younger, when we were in high school, and him saying it's not that bad, and me just being so caught up in my ways and in my narratives about, no, it's bad people. If you smoke weed, you're a bad person, right? Which is so funny to me to look back on. He would say, like, well, Joe Rogan smokes it. Well, I was like, well, fuck Joe Rogan. I hated Joe Rogan for years because of that one conversation and it was so ego of, I was just so set in this ways, but I carried that through for years and years and years. Like I was still in university, and I had that mindset of drugs are bad, all these things. It took me from listening to people that actually had some expertise in them and hearing their stories about how they talk about mushrooms or marijuana or MDMA or any of these things from people that actually have knowledge of them. It's a much different picture than what I was painted as. These are all bad things. There's no positives to them. And that doesn't mean that there's no negatives either. Right. Yeah. And you have to be, but every person that has experience with them, the first thing they say is the downsides. They're saying this isn't for everybody, right? Like this is an amazing tool. It can really help you, but it also has its consequences. You have to be good set and setting, all these things. And they're the first people to bring up the real dangers, right? And it's so much easier to believe the dangers from somebody that isn't, just dead set on getting it stigmatized, right? Like I'm not going to listen to, the government on what they think is bad about, because they can't even prove to me that they've given the other side of the coin a look, right? Okay, well, what are you? Okay, this drug is all this awful. Then you just said, well, what are the good parts of it? Oh, it has no good. There's no medical benefit, right? Like just like the way weed has been characterized for all these years of, there's no medicinal benefits to it, right? Like and that's held back so many studies and so much stuff from being studied, because they think that of like, how can I trust your judgment when you've just thought, like, when you can be so clearly wrong and so clearly unable to admit that you were wrong and to change tact. Like the fact that we can still be having these stigmas around some of these things in this day and age when we have so much knowledge, and it's so silly. Like even people that are pretty staunch on the other side realize that like it's not all we are cracking it up to be. Like even them like are starting to kind of crumble. Like it's just, I don't know. To me, I want to listen to the people that have some knowledge in it.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
well, I think it goes back to that sort of like what we were talking about earlier about the contempt prior to investigation thing. Like
exactly.
It's like,
that's the perfect example of it.
No, it's not that everybody should go be doing these things and being like, okay, got to see for yourself. But at this flip side, it's like, well, don't be so sure that, that your belief on a certain substance is all negative or positive, right? Like just keeping that open mind that, you know, you don't really know until you tried it.
Exactly.
Cause like for me too, like I was really hesitant at first to do that large dose because I was like, fuck, am I fucking up my recovery? Like, am I now not sober? Like Like, am I going to get addicted to these things? Like what's going to happen? And like I would say, like with the mushrooms, it's like the negative sides, like, I don't know if they're necessarily negative. They felt negative in the moment while I was under the influence, because like if you go to, like I said earlier, it felt like 10 years of therapy in 6 hours. Well, it's like, going to therapy, like, it's not always comfortable.
Exactly. Right. Like there's a lot of things you work through, and a lot of
uncomfortable things. Right.
And the best things in life are a bit uncomfortable. You have to go through a bit of uncomfortability to
that
reach
pain, right? Like pain is the touchstone to growth.
Yeah.
Emotional growth. And it's like, so that 6 hours, I mean, that's what I mean. That first hour, man, it was not good for me. I thought I needed to go to the hospital.
It wasn't good for you in the moment, but in the long run, it was the best thing you've ever had, right?
Yeah. It wasn't like the whole experience was this beautiful experience. Like there was moments where, like, there was moments where I was at my apartment and I was like, fuck, I got to go to the hospital. Like, Russell and Arthur there.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I was like. Oh man, I rustled myself. I Arthured myself. Like, I'm going to be in a loony bin, and I'm going to be like this for the rest of my life. I'm never going to get out of this.
Yeah.
Like, what did I do to myself? Like, I had moments like that. Oh fuck, I'm going to die. Oh, I'm going to die. Like, I'm overdosed. Oh, I got bad mushrooms. I'm going to overdose. I had moments like that.
Yeah.
But I was able to work through it and surrender and understand that a lot of those are my fears, and it really tackled me on my fears, and it showed me my fears and made me feel my fears. And that's not comfortable.
Yeah.
That's not something that's comfortable. But, on the other side, like, once I was able to face a lot of those fears, I felt like I became stronger and more brave and more aware. And it gave me that feeling of gratitude of, like, everything's going to be okay. On the other side, I had this, and that's one of the things leading back to, like, dancing. Like, we were talking earlier about dancing and, like, giving ourselves permission to dance. When I was coming down, what I call it, coming down Mushroom Mountain, I was on, like, I already peaked, and then I was coming down and walking down. I was listening to music in my apartment, and I was just dancing, like, so freely, man. So loose, like, so flowy and like lucid and just, like, comfortable. And I didn't care if anyone was watching. I just felt like so free to just dance and just have fun. And it just, like, I danced for like 2 hours straight, just the goofiest moves I've ever did. And I, like, sometimes I'll think about that and I'll laugh at that. And, like, I just think about how beautiful that experience was. And, basically, like, what they talk about inner child work. Like, I felt like I was really beginning to, get more in touch with my inner child by dancing like that, and being free and stuff like that. And it's, I could talk on and on about mushrooms, but we'll have to leave that for something else.
Before I have a million questions to ask about everything about that, but I'm curious, on that specific trip, were you out either to yourself or to the public yet at that point?
Not at that point. No, I came out,
did that come up at all during that trip? Like, was some of the things that it was showing you, and you just kind of, that was just something you weren't ready for that moment. So you just was, all the lessons you took in, that just was one of the ones that, like, or I'll let you, I have a suspicion that I want to ask you about after, but I just want to,
it did. It definitely did. Yeah. And it's like the mushrooms didn't make me gay.
Yeah, I know. But I just feel like of like taking off all the narratives and stuff and getting in touch with what you're truly feeling. It seems like that would be one of those things that would come up.
Yeah. If anything, like, I've been gay my whole entire life, and it's just like the mushrooms, like you said, peeled off my shell of my ego and brought me back to who I really wasn't. But it's like, they didn't, because it could be easily perceived like, oh, he took some mushrooms and turned gay.
That's not what I meant.
And people are like, I'm never fucking doing those then. Like, that's a curse. But no. It did come up. It definitely did come up, and it came up in a really fucking trippy way, man. It came up in a really weird way, and that was the first time it opened the door to, like, because at first, when I first came out, I was telling myself I was bisexual, for a long time, but the mushrooms kind of gave me permission to even just, like, the awareness and the openness to even just say that to myself, even just that maybe I'm bi, because by saying that, I'm saying, well, I'm attracted to men, like, I'm emotionally, physically, sexually attracted to men, and even just that was scary enough to where, like,
but it gave you that sense of freedom to feel that feeling for the first time and kind of investigate it in a space of Or I guess you're not even control. It's not even giving permission. It's just you're feeling things, right? It's bringing up feelings that.
Well, I could tell a quick story of like how
that's what we're here for.
I could tell a quick story about. I'll try to summarize it quickly. So
Don't make it long. We got fucking hours, brother.
What time we got right now? Here?
We got tons of time.
All right. Well, so just I told many of my friends and many people this short little part, but like, and I was under the influence of mushrooms at this point, and I was at Hippie Days North Country Fair, and I was what do you call it? Courting a woman. I was trying to get her to be with me.
Yeah.
But of course I disguised it as let's just be friends, right? But anyways, I just met her and I only known her for 4 days, and like we went to Hippie Days together. We ate some mushrooms. I had a wild trip before. Like that's we could talk about that some other time, the whole story. But long story short, I was under the influence and I was walking beside this girl and I was like looking at her and I was like, and she's a good looking girl. And I'm like wondering, I'm like thinking to myself, all of a sudden my brain's like, how come you haven't slept with her yet? I was like, it's been 4 days. I was like, that seems a little unusual of you. I was like, and I actually asked myself, I was like, yeah, I am not trying to sleep. Like I'm not trying to sleep with her right now. Like I don't feel like I want to right now. Like I'm just enjoying the moment.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden my brain just said some weird thing like, what if she's a transvestite? And I was like thinking, I was like, well, yeah, what if she is? Maybe that's why like we haven't got to that point yet of like sex and hooking up. And then my brain's like, could you handle it if she was? Like, what if she was? Could you handle it? And I was like, I sat there and thought, I was like, you know what? If she is, I was like, I can handle it. I was like, she's a human being. All human beings deserve love, you know, like there's nothing wrong with that. Like if that's what she is. And then she wasn't, but that's just what my brain was saying. Right. And that was kind of like even that is just like the door.
Yeah. Finding a way to open that door to you that wouldn't be so
dramatic, right?
Yeah. Of like finding it's easing you into these ideas.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. That's basically what it was like. It just kind of gently brought me to it. Just the thought process a little bit even. And then later on in that day, whatever, long story short, met up with one of my bros and I was super happy to meet him. And I was like, so happy. And he's like, where are you camping? And I was like, I'm camping with this, girl I just met. And he's like, oh really? He's like, what's her name or whatever? And I told him. And I was like, I've only known her for like 4 days. And then he's just like, should we have a threesome? And
Classic.
I'm like, it's fucking Hippie Days, man.
Yeah, might as well. What else are we here for?
Sharing's caring, man.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're about. Love. It's all about love around here. So I was all in this happy mood and whatever. And it was nighttime, like dark, right? And like all that, the only light in the sky was the moonlight.
Were you coming down Mushroom Mountain at that time?
I would say I was just finishing peaking.
Oh, okay.
I was finishing peaking.
Gotcha.
So I was in a functional place. Yeah. Like, and those higher doses, like I just cannot be around people.
Yeah.
Only after 3 hours I can start to be around people.
Right.
But for those first 3 hours I have to be alone because it's too much to be
You're
around
on a
people.
journey already. Yeah. You don't need other people to interact.
So yeah, anyway, so he's like, let's go to your tent and go look for her. And I was like, all right. So we went and we found her sitting in the tent and it was dark. And I was just like, gave me this look like I'm going to throw the moves on her now. And I was like, do it, man. I was like, I gave him the
give her, bro.
Yeah. I was like, give her, bro. Like, it's all good. I have faith in you.
Yeah.
So anyways, he's trying to pull the moves on her and whatever. And all of a sudden I just started getting like really, really fucking nervous, like vibrating nervous. And then like, I was like, what the fuck? I was like, this is weird. I was like, why am I so nervous? Like, I feel scared. And then all of a sudden she had this like tarot card thing, like these angel cards. Yeah. And they were like gold and they had like these like little messages in them and then little like images and stuff. And she's like, here, take a card. And I was like, okay. And like, I took one. And then all of a sudden it said, you're getting nervous, focus on service. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, how did this card know I was nervous? I was like, what? That's a coincidence. Or like, what? I was like, that's weird. But anyways, I'm like looking at this angel tarot card and I'm looking at it and it's like, I'm like hallucinating because it's like, I'm under the influence and it looks like there's water flowing in this waterfall and the trees are like waving in the wind and whatever. So then I'm like, okay, focus on service. All right. Like, how can I focus on service? And then all of a sudden, my buddy there, he's like, hey, he's like, you got any more of those mushrooms? I was like, yeah, I got a little bit if you want some. I was like, they're in that pocket. And he couldn't really see because it was dark in the tent. So he had a flashlight with him, and he went to pull the flashlight out. And then when he turned on the flashlight, there was a loonie that was stuck right in the lens.
Yeah.
So like the light wasn't fully shining. And I was like looking at that flashlight, and I was like, oh, man, I'm that flashlight. I was like, my light isn't shining fully like that light. There's something blocking my light. And like, that's what my brain was telling me. I was like, well, this is weird. And then all of a sudden, they were talking amongst themselves. And then like all my brain heard was like them say something like, are you gay or are you bi? And like, I don't know if they said that, but that's what my ears caught.
Yeah.
And I started tripping out. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I got paranoid. I was like,
are they talking to me? Yeah. Are they talking about me?
I was like, well, shit, they're talking about me. And I kind of felt like there was some weird group conscience thing going on between all of us, some weird thing. And then I'm starting to get real nervous at this point. I'm like tripping out because I start thinking like, oh man, like what if I am gay? Like what if like I end up touching him, or you know, something happens where there's some boundaries crossed or something, and I freak him out, and like, you know, and I started getting real afraid, right? And then all of a sudden I'm sitting down and I look in the sky and I look at the moon, and then all of a sudden, like straight up, like out of Lion King, man, a lion's face goes in front of the moon in a cloud, and it forms a lion's face. And like, I clearly heard like Mufasa's voice say like, remember who you are.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I actually got filled with this sense of like courage and bravery and like boldness and like everything that the lion symbolizes.
Goosebumps right now.
Yeah, man. It just like hit me. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know what, Cody? I was like, if you're gay, you're gay. If you're bi, you're bi. You'll figure it out. Yeah. Everything's going to be okay. Like, you're going to be okay. Yeah. And all of a sudden, like magic, it seemed like all of a sudden the loonie just like popped out of the flashlight, and the light was shining, and my brain was like, see, now you can shine. And I was just like, and then the threesome never happened, and whatever, we all went out and had fun and whatever, and she was being solid, and she didn't, so whatever. And then I was like left with that thought of like that experience. Yeah. And then that experience stayed with me for weeks, months. Yeah. And then that's kind of what brought me to wanting to do mushrooms again. I was like, so I did another large dose because I was like, there was something that happened there. Yeah. I was like, I need to investigate that. So I did them. And then like over time, it was like, I think maybe like 6 months after that I came out. Wow. So it was like, it was a part of my journey. Right?
Yeah, it was a part of your journey.
And it's like, that's why I think mushrooms are our homies, man. And they're our allies if we respect them and we use them in a proper way. Yeah. And not, like, I personally don't believe that person should be under the influence of alcohol or anything like, any hard drugs that can disrupt the experience. You have to have reverence for it. And I feel the same way as weed. Yeah. I feel like it's the same thing of, I know that's silly to be the guy of like, no, you have to respect weed. Like, come on, like people are going to do it out drinking, but like, I feel like at its best when you're using it the right way, like if you want to keep a relationship with it, because like, I think we talked about this a little bit on the last one of like, I don't have the disease of addiction, but I definitely am not on like, it's definitely a spectrum and people fall into, I'm not free and clear of things. I know myself and I need to be careful with things. So something like marijuana, I'm always being careful about how I interact with it and why I'm not using it to escape, because there's times, and especially in this last year when I've been miserable at work and just coming home and it's pure escapism. And I know that, and I'm at least conscious of that. It's not like it used to be where I would just lie to myself of, no, I'm just enjoying this. I just like this. It's like, no, I'm consciously knowing that this is not what I want it to be, and trying to find the ways of reverence that keep it in a space where it's not, I'm keeping it as a tool, not as a crutch. You know what I mean? And to keep it and to be always re-questioning that and making sure, how are you using it right now? Is this a crutch? Is this a tool? Are you learning from it? Are you escaping something? Like, are you using it to grow? And I feel like that's how we need to treat everything, right? Like I struggle to say this about alcohol because I've never seen the tool side of alcohol. I've seen it for fun and enjoyment. For sure, I can get that side of it, but I've never got really drunk and learned something about myself, really. You know what I mean? Like I've learned, how to embarrass myself. I've learned, and I've definitely had amazing nights that I don't think would have been the same without its presence. Like I can sometimes see but
it's different with something like mushrooms or marijuana, where there's something else to it. There's some, and I know this is going to turn a lot of people off, but there's some sort of collective consciousness to those things, right? I think way more mushrooms than weed, and I've never done them myself to say this, but all these people that I value and what they talk about is, it's almost as if everybody who has ever taken mushrooms before all goes into this realm, and it's there's memory of it. And all those people's journeys of all those hard things that mushrooms has helped all these people through, it has the knowledge of all that. Like, if you buy into that way of thinking, there's probably 500,000 people that have been, that whatever the mushroom is has taken through that journey and found all these different ways. That's how it knows how to softly bring you into that realization and not just hit you with it right over the head. They know that doesn't work, and it's had thousands of years of this collective consciousness to learn these things and to teach these lessons. And that's why we need to respect it, because if we don't, it can hit back, right? Like it almost has consciousness of it, of like, if you're going out and you don't care about your set and setting and you're already half cut and you're, out in like a new place and you just take a bunch of mushrooms.
You can really freak the fuck out.
You really could, right? But that's not respecting that consciousness of what it is, and having reverence for the tool and for the magic that it is almost.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a reason why they call it magic, man.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Magic mushrooms, man. It's like, there's a reason why.
Yeah.
Because they're like, it can lose its magic, and that's what it's taught. Like any medicine, because that's how I view it, is it's a medicine.
Yeah.
And it's like how you use it. But if you take too much medicine, it could become a poison. So
for sure.
How,
and even it's not even a thing of like too much. It's, if you don't keep the relationship healthy, it can become a poison, right? Because like, there's been times when I've smoked more weed or less weed, right? Like, the amount almost doesn't matter. It's almost the reasoning and the relationship you're having with it at that time that matters, right? Of that respect. And are you asking those questions, and are you, making sure you're in the right space for it, right? It's almost hard to explain. Like, I struggle with some of these things. Yeah.
I totally understand what you're saying. The relationship to it, because like there is that, because like I'll smoke weed every now and then too, right? And then like I'll ask myself, I'm like, am I trying to escape what I'm currently feeling in order to get a better feeling? And that's what, like, am I using it as a crutch, or am I using it because I know it's a tool that can help me figure something out,
right? In
order to grow from the like if I'm feeling bad and then I take some weed and then or smoke some weed and then I have like a little bit of a slight shift in perspective on like, okay, this is why you're feeling like this.
Yeah.
Then I can make some changes in that area.
Yeah.
And same thing with mushrooms too. It's like I've had experiences with mushrooms where it seems, for me, the way it seems to function for me is like it almost has like a checklist of things it wants to work on with me. And then when I do them, they'll be like, okay, check. Let's talk about, like, for one of the things for me is like surrender, learning how to surrender. It's like what it feels like to surrender. And like when I'm trying to control things and trying to force things, I get this feeling of like my body's contracting and my psyche's contracting, and I can feel this contractness, and it's like everything gets tight and like my muscles get tight and everything is contracting.
Uncomfortable almost.
Yeah. And it's like, it just feels rigid and weird, and I just don't like, it's uncomfortable. And then it'll show me what it feels like to surrender, like what surrendering to my truth feels like, surrendering to like my conscience, my truth. And then my body relaxes. I feel warm. I feel this joy. I feel like, okay, like this is what it feels like. And the mushrooms for me will say like, see, this is the difference. Can you feel the difference? Like when you're like, when you behave like this or think like this, you contract. When you behave like this or think like this, you relax and notice the feeling. And then it will tell me like, everything's about feelings anyways. Don't you notice that everything is about feeling? Why do you go for a run? Why do you read? Why do you do these things? It's because you're looking for a certain feeling. And that's one of the things. And it's like, and if I don't learn those things or practice them in my like sober waking life, day to day thing, and I do mushrooms again, it'll be like it'll bring up the same thing of like, how come you're not like,
why didn't you listen? Why didn't you take this advice?
It's like going to a therapist and complaining over the same thing over and over. And the therapist is like, fuck, like, holy shit, man. Like,
we've been over this.
Yeah. Like, are you going to do something different? And that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah.
Cause like I've, like I said, I haven't done a large dose in a while, but that's something they bring up.
Yeah.
It's like a little checklist of things.
For sure. And that it's funny to hear, not funny is not the right word, but it's interesting to hear your personal experience with mushrooms, just because of all like I've listened to probably thousands of hours of podcasts of people talking about their experiences and their journeys and what mushrooms have done for them, how they see them in their relationship. And it's funny how similar so many of them are, and how, what's the right word? I'm trying to find the right way to explain it. Like
archetypal sort of.
Yeah. Like how archetypal they are to the human experience, right? Like it's a glove in hand fit of like and it makes sense, because what people don't realize is the human experience paired with psychedelics goes back thousands and thousands of years. If you read the book, the Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, is one. And the something key. It's sitting in my room. The key Immortality Key. Yeah. It goes back thousands of years. Socrates, Plato, they all went to the Eleusinian Mysteries, and they all went to this cave, and they took this substance that they're fairly certain they kind of have an idea of what it is, but it's very similar to all these psychedelic drugs, right? And you see it throughout history, right? Like Steve Jobs, right? He was into acid, right? Like all these amazing people throughout history, and you look at the lessons that they've learned, whether they're out front about it, but like when you look at the mathematicians that have made the biggest leaps in math, probably 50% of them have had amazing experiences with some sort of psychedelic, right? It's amazing when you start to actually lose some of the taboo and look into it. It is an amazing part of our culture, and the human being has advanced over thousands of years of putting our brain state into these other states and finding the lessons in them. And we used to have all this cultural, like not pomp and circumstance, that's a really bad way to put it, but like things that like tradition that forces you to have that respect and the and honor the mushroom or whatever it is, right? Like that used to be built into the ceremonies, right? Like it used to be they had all this circumstance surrounding it that would force you to do it right, and it would set the set and setting, and you weren't just taking them right to party on a weekend by yourself, right? But now we've lost all that. We've created all this taboo so that people do it in, not the best settings, and we're kind of forcing people under the, into the dark corners to do these things and just make these decisions on their own, when we know that it's important to have the knowledge and have the right mindsets for what's going into it, right? Like I think the damage that's done by this idea of a good and a bad trip is uncalculable, because there's so many people that understand that. But once you understand that, it's not good and bad trips, it's going to bring up some difficult things, and you can either give into that and go with it, or you can fight against it and you're going to have a really bad time. But just that mindset change going into it, if if we could make a cultural change so that people understood that going into it, the world would be a much better place, and we would alleviate a ton of suffering right there with just that one small intention change on what that is, right? And it's just changing the words you use to describe it, right?
Well, I personally think that it's the future.
Yeah.
I think it's possible that in the future that like these psychedelic therapies will be like introduced into like even treatment centers and all kinds of healing centers or traumatic.
I think it's under 10 years, Cody.
Yeah.
Myself.
That's what I think. Yeah.
I think under 10 years.
It's already starting to get into the media, right? Like into Netflix movies, and it's starting to be like microdosing is becoming a common freight, like thing that people talk about.
Yeah.
And it's starting to like enter into our language and topics of conversation, and people aren't so afraid to talk about them. And I think it's like platforms like these that give gives these ideas like an opportunity to reach a large variety of different types of people. Yeah. And
well, that's like me. If I wouldn't have started listening to Joe Rogan, I wouldn't have, my mind wouldn't have been open to taking in some of these things, right? Like, and it's hard to give due to that of just what a powerful thing that is, that these new ideas are spreading, and all that when you look out into the future, into the next 10 years, what impact that's going to have on society. And that's what gives me hope right now, is that I think that is going to be a big change, and it's on its way. And I think that's almost the only change, because when you look around at what the biggest thing that, just to use mushrooms for the example of kind of the story that you told today and all these other stories you hear, the biggest thing it did to you was strip away the ego and the narratives that were interfering with your true understanding of yourself, right? And what are the biggest issues that we face today, right? If you talk about politics, if you talk about geopolitical stuff, it's all ego, because there's all, it might be a government, but what is that government? It's people. It's made up of people. What do people have? Egos. When those egos aren't in check, that's what causes all this, right? Yeah. The stuff with the pandemic and the fighting and the sides that are creating, that's all ego, both sides, right? Everyone is all fighting on ego. And there's these amazing tools we have that help people not battle against ego, but help, right? Like I talked about earlier, tools to allow you to let that ego out of the cage and work with it, and to love your ego and to find it when it serves you, and not to be just having it run your life, right? And I think that's going to be the big change in a couple of years, when we have these tools that are going to have a huge part of the populace gain the tools to weaponize is not the right word. I want to say weaponize their ego, like make it serve you, but like, I don't know.
Make it your ally.
Yeah, make it your ally is a better way to say it. Yeah.
Well, because one of the things,
make it work for you.
It's like these egotistical wars and stuff that go on, like a lot of them are about like ideologies or like viewpoints or like perspectives on what they think is right and what is true. But then that like it leads to that right there, like the truth. Like, well, what's the truth should be, I don't know. The truth to me is probably the most important thing, right? But like trying to find the truth and know what the truth is, like that is the tricky thing. Because how do you know? Like, cause I've wondered about this. I'm like, is there only one truth or is there many truths or is there just one one truth, but there's many lies, or is there many different, like, cause like they say all of our experiences are subjective. Like you can look at this car and say, this is a beautiful car. And then I could be looking at it and be like, it's all right. And like, but where's the truth, right? Cause it's subjective. And
exactly.
Like, but the truth is that if you look at it through scientific lens, it's like, it's got wheels and it's got, paint on it. It has a certain color, and then like that's one truth of it. But and it's like leading back, like it's like I kind of lost my train of thought there, but it was basically about where's the truth, right?
Exactly. Like, and I think that's a balance of finding that there are truths out there, and there are things that there's truths, but there's truth, like those wheels are round, right? Like that would be a truth, and that's less subjective, right? Like, because it goes into a certain realm of reality where subjectivity holds less. But when you say that car is white, it's kind of true, but now it gets a little bit more slippery there, because that's not as true as the roundness, because color is much more subjective than shape, right? Like in a way, but at each level, it depends, what viewpoint you have, because like, if you find somebody that's smart enough, they can make a really good argument those wheels aren't round, right? It's all about perspective and how much knowledge you have and what you can bring to bear to put power behind those ideas to create truth. Anybody can create truth with argument, right? But that's the thing to me, is that understanding that there's no one truth, and that the only place that gets us closer to truth is open conversation where we can argue and we can get there together. And it's always, truth is dialogue, right? Yeah. And what scares me right now is how much so many things are getting shut down if they're just saying, this is true, right? What is true is that the people that are unvaccinated are what's killing everybody. This is true, but there's no conversation, but we're not allowed. And it might be true, but what's shutting down, what is sacred to me is a conversation around it, so that we can talk about these things and we can come up to something at the end. And what scares me more than anything is just shutting down our avenue to truth by shutting down conversation and shutting down people reaching across and having people that you really disagree with in front of you, so you can have a discussion with them that's open, because that's the only way we find truth. And what I see right now is as a big attack on our truth making mechanisms, right? Which is conversation, which is
like
open.
Free speech and
free
stuff,
speech,
right?
Exactly that. And that's what scares me so much right now. And I feel like I get labeled as all these things, when really I don't care all that much about the things I'm fighting for right now. It's the underpinning attack on free speech that I think is the core to everything.
Well,
and what holds up our whole society. And that's what I don't think people realize. They just think, oh, you're just being hard-headed about this one COVID thing. No, it has nothing to do with COVID. This is an attack on something. And what worries me is there's a lot of bad people in the world that want to see America, Canada, the modern democracies fall. And the biggest thing that we're built upon is that free speech and our ability to find truth and to find and to find sense. Like, these are our sense-making apparatuses. When you attack that, you take us right out at the knees, and now we are powerless to do anything, and we are easily overtakeable. We are divided. We are weak, and it's so obvious to me that even if there aren't actors, like, it's so easy. It'd be so easy for people to stoke those flames because it benefits them, that it's almost, I don't need proof in front of me to say, hey, this is these actors trying to divide people and stuff, because it's so obvious that would be in their best interest, that they're obviously doing it. Why wouldn't they? Right? It's so easy to pay, you could pay 100 people to just sit on a computer all day and just go on Facebook and, make one account and stoke this side, make this account, go stoke that side, and that's all there. So say you have to pay them, $20 an hour, 10-hour day, $200. That $200 investment of the seeds that they can sow and the chaos that they can, and the attacks on the real sense-making mechanisms that make these countries great. You can't, you could buy bombs and all those things and can't do half the damage you can do in that. But we need to realize that we need to take a step back of, okay, understanding that that's what the internet is and that's what they're stoking up. Let's take a step back and let's realize that our neighbors are our neighbors and we love them. And these are the people that we need, that if shit gets hard, we're going to need these people. We don't need to attack them and demonize them. Whatever's said on the internet, that's not real. It's not real. We need to step into this real world and we need to go across to our neighbors and be kind and try and find, even if it's the most different person that you've ever come across, like find the person that you think you cannot find one thing in common with and go talk to them for 5 minutes and find that you are wrong. The human beings are so similar. Even the two human beings on this earth that are the most different, like if you could just make some sort of contest that would find the two most radically different people on this earth, they would be 99% the same, right? Like
a lot of the things, yeah.
Right? Like biologically, mentally, like just evolutionarily over the last, 200,000 years of evolution that made a human. That stuff runs deep, right? And there's all this culture, there's a cultural layer that is more impactful on humans than any other being that's ever been, right? Like there's nothing that has culture like humans do. But even that is only so deep, right? What goes much deeper than that of who human beings are at the core is so similar between all of us. But it's just, there's so many people that benefit by making people forget that and highlighting the differences, right? So that it feels everyone's so different and everything's so divisive, but it's all a show. It's all an act, right? And I think that's something when you take mushrooms, it taps you back into that connection between everybody and you feel the similarity and the differences aren't as highlighted as it is. I think, almost the internet is the biggest example of the opposite side of that, of like highlighting the differences and really toning down like what we are the same. And like being on mushrooms is the complete opposite of it. Just tones down the differences and really highlights the similarities. And I say that never doing mushrooms before, so that could be complete bullshit. I could be wrong on that, but like that's just the way I see it. And it's fascinating for me to watch. It seems so obvious to me. It's frustrating at times that people don't see it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, it's like a question of being how open-minded are people, and then if they're open-minded, like how agreeable is a person or how disagreeable is somebody. Because like that's sometimes I even feel like maybe I'm too open-minded sometimes because I can see so many variations of the coin. I can see every side to it. I feel like most of the time, but I still know that I'm subject to like cognitive dissonance. So I do, because like for me personally, like I lean I have a certain viewpoint about this whole COVID thing, vaccine thing, but I can see both sides, and it's like, and I honestly don't know what to believe because like there's so much information. It's like I can see both sides, and I'm like, I'm kind of on like whoa, like I don't know. I just don't really know, and I don't really. I can see what one side is saying, I can see what the other side's saying, and I'm like, well, what do I believe and what do I know? Yeah. And like, sometimes that's why I think being open-minded is,
it's almost a curse and a gift.
It can be, it can be depending on.
And that's something I've thought a lot lately of just, I'm in the very similar boat of, I feel like I see both sides of it and I can have so much compassion for what would put you on either side of it. But I almost wish sometimes for ignorance of like, I wish I could just be on either side of it. I wish I
like
could.
Solid,
I wish I could be so like that there's no fuckery going on with the vaccine. Like not that the vaccines themselves are unsafe, but just the business practices, that they put in place to make sure that they were the only option, that the only thing we did was vaccines, and that they were going to make their money, whether or not, whatever they had to step on, other options we had to step on to get there. Yeah. Right. I wish I could not know any of that and just be raw vaccines. This is everything. And just lockdowns. Like, I wish I could be on that side, or I wish I could be on the other side. This is all a conspiracy. COVID isn't real. Like, because both of those camps, at least you have allies. And I'm right in the middle of like, I see both sides, but I just feel like, fuck, this would be so much easier if I was just ignorant and fell on either one of those sides. Not even ignorant. That's not ignorance, because how could you blame them for, you just get blasted by either side. You get blasted by propaganda that's making you believe and reinforcing all those beliefs and riling you up. How can you blame those people for getting to that side? But it just feels very lonely to be somewhere in the middle, to have questions for both sides, right? I have some real questions for all the people that don't believe COVID's real. I have some real questions for you. But all the people that think that, like the only solution is lockdowns, we need to, the people that are the anti-vax equivalent to the other side of the pole, I have a lot of questions for those people too. Right. And it's just like,
And I do. I ask questions on both, because I have people. I know people on both sides.
Same.
And I talk to them, and I'm like getting this I feel like I'm getting a bigger picture.
Yeah.
But then I'm like still not 100%.
Exactly. Like, how do you know? And there's so much conflicting news. But what speaks to me about what you just said is that you're talking to people on both sides. What I worry about is that what I've seen is that people don't want to talk to the other side. They don't want to know. They just say, I can't even wrap my head around why someone would think that way. Go talk to somebody that would think that way, and you'll be able to wrap your head, because people that are on the other side of it. But people are so worried. I think it goes back to this identity thing of they've built up their identity of they're on this team. It's tribal, right? Like I'm on team vaccines, right? I don't want that is so innate to me that my identity is now tied to it. I don't want something to shake my identity. What's scarier than that? I don't want to go into and have a conversation. What if he shakes my beliefs? And what if that shakes me out of this really comfortable space of I know I'm right into the space of where me and you are of fuck, I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle. That's a way worse place to be, right? So why would they do that? Why would they why would they shake that confidence and belief, right? Like that's what's holding everyone back. And I think there's a lot of forces that are keeping people, and just, there's this whole middle ground of kind of questioning, and then it's everyone penned in these sides. But there's a lot of powerful people sitting at that gate for people that want to come in the middle, and they're hitting them back because they say, no, this benefits us a lot to have people polarized and angry and fighting between themselves, because then nobody questions, like people are so busy fighting between each other that they don't question the people that are making the calls and that are, really need to be held to a higher standard, but nobody's holding accountability because we're too busy fighting within each other. And I think that is not, I don't think that's all a conspiracy, but I don't think that's completely just happenstance either. I think there's people that are, massaging it that benefit from that, right?
I think so, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think media is like the biggest tool for
the biggest tool
right now, right?
100%.
Because like that, we're just overloaded with information, and both, like you said, both sides are extremely convincing. Like they have intelligent people on both sides that it's convincing, and it's like, but then there's the crowd, and it's like, and the crowd is the majority, and it's like, what's the majority doing? And
what I think the majority of people are kind of, I don't really know, but it's whatever's least impactful to them. You know what? If I'm going to get less hate and just it's going to be easier for me to live my life in this camp, I'm just going to hop into it because I just don't want the bullshit. Or is it going to make it easier just to hop in on this camp? Sure, I'm just going to take that. Really, I don't know. I don't feel that strongly either way. I just want to live my life. That's what I hear from most people, right? And how do you blame people for that too? Life is hard enough. You don't need to be taking on the struggles of like these giant geopolitical things that human beings are not designed to take on, right? We're designed to live in a small tribe and have small tribe of like 150, like we're designed to handle 150 people issues, right? We're not designed to handle like a 7 billion person problem, right? Like that's not what humans are designed for. But now we're thrown onto the stage and we expect everyone to, and we have this media that feeds off it, and they make their money by keeping people scared, right? That's the biggest, and I think that is just a symptom of the time that we're in. I think all this is happening. We're just seeing the symptom of a shift from old media to new media, and we're just in a really terrible spot where we're stuck in between, where old media is dying, news is dying, their numbers are just crashing through the floor. So that's thousands of jobs, that's livelihoods. They don't want to give that up, right? And they're not evil for not wanting to give that up, but that puts them into a position where they'll, if clickbait's what we need to keep the lights on and keep having people jobs, that's what we'll do. If feeding into this fear and that's what's going to, if we have to keep people terrified to death to keep their news on 24/7 on CNN or Fox News, whatever side it is, we'll do that because that's what we need to do to survive. And I think we're feeling the pain of that right now, but eventually all they're doing is reinforcing the reasons that they're dying and that they're losing. is exactly what they're doubling down on to try and, just squeeze the last, they're just trying to squeeze the last drops out of what they had. But I think that only lasts so long. And again, I think that's something where if we have this conversation in 5 years from now, I think the media landscape looks much, much different. Right. And I think we're just in the throes of it right now. Yeah. And I think that's the same thing with like universities and stuff. I think they're old and outdated, and the things that are crumbling them, they're doubling down on right now. And I think that's only going to end in collapse. And I think that we're just seeing them circling the bowl, right? Of just, the people are losing faith in them. Like I went through university. It was the biggest joke I've ever seen. Like, it was an absolute farce. And it was like, this is what millions of people around the world are thinking is the only option. Cause kind of what you're taught growing up is, you go to high school and then you go to get this, you go get a degree and this is your path. And I don't know. That worries me a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
But what can we do? Unique
times we're in, right?
Unique times. What was Joe Rogan's tour or one of his specials? Crazy. No. Anyway, yeah, I think that was one of his like tour names, because it's just, what else do you say, right? Like, fuck, it's crazy times. Strange times. That's what it was. Yeah. So one thing, this is kind of changing gears a little bit, but it was something I wanted to talk to you about last time, and something we didn't get to chat about was growing up. I was always a huge MMA fan, right? And I loved it, but my parents hated it. It was not okay. And when the pay-per-views would come, the only place in town we could go was your place. Watch the pay-per-views, right? Yeah. But I was always a couple years younger, and it was an older crew, so I was always terrified to go. So I was always like, I had this love of MMA, but I was always so scared to go to your place and like be with all the older crew of like you and Graham and all them. Just like, for some reason, 2 years difference when you're like 10, 12 feels like the world, right? Like when you're 2 school years older than somebody. And I'm wondering, that was just every time I think of MMA, it's always tied to you because of that, right? Like, but I'm wondering, I'm wondering, how much of that, because like clearly that was something to you at that time. Like, do you still follow the sport at all? Does it still have any part of it? Is it more boxing now because that's one of the training that you did? Do you have where does combat sports fall in your life nowadays?
For me, I'd say I definitely practice it a lot more than I watch it now. Like, I still do watch it, and I still do keep up, but I don't keep up with it the same way I used to. Like, I miss those fight nights, man.
Oh man, yeah.
We used to have this little pool table, and play pool, and wrestle and play fight, bro fight.
That's why I was fucking terrified. They're fucking grown men.
And we used to just get fucking fucked every night. But I don't know, it was fun. But yeah, I still follow it, and I still like it, and I like the philosophy of martial arts. And like, I just feel like it really benefited me. Yeah. Not in my early addiction, because I kind of abused my skill. But now that I'm like in a healthier place, I can see the value in like, being able to protect myself and the self-confidence. And, like I've been studying, this guy named Robert Moore, and, there's this, YouTube channel. It's an older YouTube channel. Some of the audio is kind of rough, but it's called the Minnesota Men's Conference. And they have they're kind of like, they talk about men's masculinity, men's grandiosity, men's shame. And there's a guy called Robert Moore who talks about sort of Carl Jung's philosophy on the archetypes. So like the magician, the warrior, the king, and the lover. And my understanding of like martial arts is like, it gives a person a certain relationship to that warrior archetype, and the warrior archetype is like, fighting for a cause, like being
something bigger than yourself.
Being a protector, taking action, doing things, being having motivation, having drive and stuff. And it's like these archetypal energies are like, there's sort of like circuits in the brain and the psyche that function. If you like, for example, like one of the things, if you hear someone say like, oh, that person thinks he's king shit. Well, in like the archetypal lens, that would be like that person has like an unhealthy relationship to their king archetype, and like that's what the narcissistic personality disorder might be, right? Like they're walking around thinking the world owes the world owes them something. That
sounds familiar.
People should just do things for them, right? Having a sense of entitlement, all that stuff, and that would be like the unhealthy side of the king archetype. But there's a healthy side, like stewardship, and same thing with the warrior. So there's like a healthy relationship to it, and an unhealthy relationship to those kind of psychic energies. And with martial arts, like I feel like it gives me a healthy relationship to my warrior archetype. And like, for example, like say if Well, this actually leads me to a story. I'll give you another example of a situation that just happened to me before I moved to Edmonton, and started working in St. Albert at Poundmakers. But so for example, of the warrior archetype that I can think of is like, so I was outside the cannabis store over at in Slave Lake by A&W there.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there, and I biked there, and that day I had my double braids out. So I had 2 braids, and usually I rock the single braid, but that time I was wearing my double braid, and I was just finished buying a doobie, and I was jumping on my bike, and I was about to undo my lock, and I noticed this guy, and he looked at me, and he kind of looked at me like he knew me at first, and I was kind of like looking at him like, do I know this guy?
Yeah.
And like, it was kind of friendly at first. And then all of a sudden he just instantly went aggressive, and like his body language changed, his facial expressions changed, and like his whole aura just kind of changed about him. And he was looking at me, and he's like, what the fuck you think you're doing? And I was like, kind of standing there. I was like, what? And I was like, I was kind of like a little bit flabbergasted. He's like, what do you think you're doing wearing those? And I was like, oh, and this was a native man as well.
Yeah.
So this was strange to me. It was a native man. He's like, what the fuck you think you're wearing those for? And I was like, what, my braids? He's like, yeah, what do you think you're wearing those braids for, man? And I was like, cause I'm Cree. And he was like, well, fucking speak some Cree to me if you're Cree. And I was like, Tansei. He's like, well, fuck, anybody can say Tansei, man. He's like, and I was like, and I kind of feel like what happened was I activated my warrior archetype in that moment, because I could tell that this guy was coming at me with hostility. And it gave me the ability to sort of stand up for myself. And I was like, I stood up, and I was like, are you okay, man? I was like, you got a problem or something? Which was aggressive, right?
Yeah.
But I'm still working on my behaviors. Like, I could have set a better boundary, but anyways, as soon as I said that, this guy come charging at me, like full tilt, come like charging at me. Like, I thought for sure we were going to fight, right?
Yeah.
Like, I thought for sure we were going to throw down. And then I was just like looking him in the eye, and I could feel this energy of like, okay, I'm going to give him an uppercut, and then I'm going to drop this guy.
Yeah.
But then for me, that was my warrior archetype kind of kicking in. And I think he probably sensed that at some level. And as he approached me, he was about maybe 10 feet away from me. And all of a sudden something else switched in me. And maybe that's the lover archetype or the magician archetype, whatever archetype that was. But anyways, it something switched in me where I was looking at him, and all of a sudden I just said, I was like, hey man, you're coming pretty aggressively at me. And then he started slowing down, and then he got about maybe 4 feet away from me. And I was like, I looked him in the eye, and I was like, what's wrong, brother? I was like, why are you upset?
Yeah.
What happened? And man, this part tripped me the fuck out, man. He just, all of a sudden he stopped, and he couldn't speak. He just was like, and we were standing like pretty close to each other, like within fighting distance, right? Yeah. Like in each other's personal space. And then all of a sudden he was trying to spit out the words, and he couldn't. And I was like, why did my braids bother you? Like, why are you okay? I said that to him, man. All of a sudden the dude started crying, man.
Wow.
Like, he just started crying. And then I just felt this like empathy, and I just felt like this, like, he didn't even need to say it. Yeah. He just looked me in the eye, and like, he's like, I'm sorry, man. Like, it's not about it. It's not you, man. I'm sorry. Like, I know I can speak the Cree language, and our people are suffering, and man, it's the way I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. And I was like, it's all good, man. I was like, what? I was like, what's your name? And he wouldn't give me his name. And then I was like, well, my name's Cody. And I was like, I'm also known as Ixinu Pisum. And that translates to like the old sun man in my Cree name. And I pointed at the sun, and I was like, see, that's the sun there. I was like, that's my grandfather. And then he understood. He understood what it was. He's like, I understand. I was like, all right, man, well, have a good day, man. And then shook his hand, and he walked away. Wow. And it was just like, that experience was like, it tripped me out, because like I went in and cried after, because I was like, I knew what he was saying, and like the way I perceived it is like, and I don't know if this is how he perceived it, but this is how I was speculating about it, was that like my double braids might have triggered something in him, might have triggered a trauma or something, or he thought I was being a poser or whatever, thought something, it triggered him. And then when I responded a certain way to him, like, I think he was used to people either running away because he was an aggressive looking guy, like a tough looking, mean looking dude. And I think either people would like, he would punk them out and they would run away, or they would fight him. And I think he was only used to those two
energies,
those two like outcomes, like those two results. And so when he came at me like that, and then I basically I addressed his behavior. I was like, hey, you're becoming aggressive at me like that. He might not have known he was coming aggressively. He might have just thought that's what you do. And then it kind of gave him a reality check in a sense, or a check. Yeah. And then when he came up to me and I was like, are you okay, man? Like, maybe no one has ever asked him, like, hey, are you okay? Like, what happened? Like, why are you angry? Like, why are you upset? Yeah. And like, I think something happened, and I think it just rocked him. Like it opened something in his mind, or like maybe he didn't ever ask himself those, who knows? I don't know, but something happened, and I've never had, that was my first time having an experience like that. Yeah. Like that. And I wondered after, I was like, weird. I was like usually I would have just fought. Like I would have just fought this guy. That's what I would initially was going to do. I was like, I'm just going to fight this guy. Like, he's coming at me. I'm defending myself. I have a right to defend myself. This guy's not going to hurt me. And like, that to me is my warrior archetype. That's what the warrior is all about. Like, standing up for oneself, protecting others. Right. Yeah. And so like, with that scenario, I think the reason why I was able to also not just punch him when he got right in my face, because like I could have easily just fucking dropped him. Right. But I had like a certain level of self-restraint. And I think that's what all the martial arts teaching has given. That's exactly what I was hearing in that. It gave me a healthy relationship to those energies inside of me, my anger, or my rage, or my feeling like, what, this guy's attacking me? Like, why is he attacking me? Like, what did I do? Like, the martial arts gave me a healthy relationship to that energy.
And it allowed other outcomes to manifest, because like when I put myself in that position of, because I don't have the confidence in my fighting abilities like you do, if you would have put me in that situation, right? Like, surely so much context stuff that you couldn't swap us out. It'd be a very different situation. But if you could somehow get me into that same situation, my fear and my insecurity about my own abilities would have had me react so much differently that I would never have that door that you eventually opened up and went down of, compassion and trying to, that wouldn't have been available to me, because I'd be so worried about myself. Like, I'd be so unsure of or so scared for my own safety in that. Of like, it's amazing to hear what that does, of having that confidence in yourself and having those skills to know that's what opened that door up to like almost the violent teachings open the door to a peaceful outcome. You know what I mean? Like, in a way. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that's the message I've heard over and over again as I have gone down this journey of, just being a fan of martial arts, right? Like, I haven't done barely any. I've done a couple classes of jiu-jitsu, right? Like, I'm so far away from anything of that, but I've listened to a lot of fighters, and I very much listen to that. And that's what they talk about, of, the scariest guys in the room are the calmest and are the most compassionate, right? Because they know they don't need to, right? Like, all that insecurity and stuff that creates probably 90% of the fights in the world is all based off insecurity, right? Those people that are secure in themselves and their abilities, they don't have that, right? And that's what opens the doors up to finding other avenues out of it, right? Of using your words, right? It's so hard to be calm enough to use your words and to have your, like, when I put myself in that situation, I'd be so scared. My words probably wouldn't, which are my biggest tools, my words and my mind. That's my biggest tool, right? My fists are not it. I'd never thrown a punch in my life, right? Like, that's not my skills, but the fear completely takes that away, right? And it's that confidence that builds up. And that's something that I want to get with jiu-jitsu, is I want to have some sort of confidence in myself that I can handle that, because I think that's going to open up the doors for my other skills that I have to shine through. Because even though I feel very confident in my ability to de-escalate and to use my words, I feel like so often my fear would prevent me from using those skills, right? And I think that's where I want to get to that point myself. And I think that's the most beautiful part of what martial arts are, and what they give to people, the gifts that they give to people, aside from the physical, right?
Yeah, exactly. It does strengthen a person in a different kind of way. And it depends how they use it, right?
For sure. And it depends how you're taught, right? Yeah. You can go into certain schools that teach honor and teach you how to use it, right? Or you can go in somewhere where it's an unhealthy energy and they're not teaching.
And they create beasts, man. Like, you can create you watch that show, what's that new one, that one, Cobra Kai or whatever?
Oh yeah. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, it's kind of like that philosophy. Yeah. There's like the cobras are like, they're kind of like more toxic masculine. Yeah. They're like, be aggressive, no mercy. And then the other one, Mr. Miyagi, is like more peaceful,
Right.
like self-defense and like the way of the peace. And even you ever watch that show Never Back Down a long time ago?
Yeah. Love that movie.
Yeah. And it's like that, right? Like that. I kind of related to that main character. He was like this angry dude, right? Like had kind of a fucked up past, and he's like angry all the time. And then he goes to that gym and he meets that black guy, and then his trainer, and then he trains him, and then he kind of like helps him to sort of like have a relationship with his anger in a healthier way through martial arts, through becoming skilled. But then he fights that other guy, and the antagonist. And he's like really skilled and trained, but he uses it for more of a dark way, for like beating people up and stuff. And, and it's like, Jordan Peterson has that saying too. It's like, well, I don't know. It's not Jordan Peterson's saying, but it's a quote he always uses. And it's like, basically like if you're not capable of cruelty, or no, if you're not capable of or if you know what I'm talking about. It's like
I do,
like
and I'm trying to remember it.
It's like a good person or a virtuous person is a person
knows he's capable of cruelty.
Yeah, who's capable of being dangerous or capable of cruelty.
And chooses not to.
Yeah. And it's like his kind of view on that is because it's like if people, they say they're harmless. They're like, if I'm a harmless person, I'm a good person. I would never hurt somebody. Yeah. But if you ever encountered somebody who is malevolent, or someone who could beat the shit out of you, or someone who like wants to cause harm to you, like you're a victim to them. Right. But if you're capable of defending yourself, you're capable of being dangerous, like you
choose not to.
But
that's where virtue is, right?
Or even if you encounter a malevolent, cruel person, you can protect yourself from that person,
right? And protect others,
right? And like that's that's sort of like how I see what being a warrior is. It's like that's all about being a healthy warrior. There's different kinds of warriors, and there's different kind of kings and magicians and lovers,
and I see that too, like with myself, of like, you know, people could look at me and say, "Oh, you've never been in a fight, and you're like, you must be a very nice person, a good person." But it's not because it's because I'm scared, right? It's because it's not like I'm this natural born killer that has just been so virtuous throughout my whole life that I've never hurt anybody with it. It's just, no, that's just, you know what? Like if I had training, I choose, then that'd be a different story, but that's not the case, right? Like it's interesting to look at it that way. And that's why, you know, but I've always had like that ridiculous, based off nothing confidence that every guy has, that like, but if ever anything happened, right? Like that is such complete bullshit, especially when you go into the fucking jiu-jitsu room and you get tossed around by fucking somebody that has, you know, 6 months on you and you got 50 pounds on him. It's like, yeah, very clearly, like that is
it's a
artificial.
wake-up call, right? It's a wake-up call. It humbles the ego. It shows you, like, for me, things like that teach me, like, okay, I thought I knew, and I just got shown that I didn't know shit. And it's like, well, then it makes me think about like, well, how many other things do I think I know? Yeah, that I actually have no fucking clue.
Everything.
Because like I would go to the bar, remember, and people would fight, and I would see these guys fighting outside, and I'm like, holy shit, you guys do not know what you're doing. Like if you entered into my realm, like that's why like martial arts has given me that ability to walk away more. Like I don't get in fights anymore. Really, I haven't been in a fight since my addiction. Like that was 8 years ago. I haven't been in, because I just look at a person and I'm like, I could just sense, I'm like, I'm not going to fight this person. Like even if they're yelling at me or screaming at me, it's like, I can really hurt this person. And what do I got to prove? I got nothing to prove. Like, unless they're trying to hurt me or like really that they're trying to take my life away, then I'll
trying to hurt somebody else.
Or trying to hurt someone else. Like I'll protect someone else. Like, but I've walked away from so many fights and so many, even little like petty arguments and debates that I'm like, oh, okay, now this person's trying to attack my character. It's like, like whatever.
I don't need to be part of this. I don't need to prove nothing. I don't need to go down to their level. But that's something that's so hard, and that takes something. It takes something really strong to be able to get you to that point in life where you can do that, right? Like whether it's the journey that you went through, which I would say is, you know, pretty impactful, or whatever else it is in that person's life. That's definitely a switch that you can see in people of what point on the journey are they? Have they gotten to that point where they can where they can walk away from things like that, or are they still at that point where they're in that proving part of the journey where you're still trying to prove yourself to yourself and to others and to everyone else, right? Like, or are you past it and you've kind of gotten to the other side of it where you can walk away from those things? And actually, it's funny that we get to this part of the conversation, because when I was listening to our first podcast we did, and you were talking about the sweat lodges and just what a powerful place of what did you say? It was I think you called it like a powerful place of healing and growth. Mm-hmm. And I was trying, and just driving down, I was thinking like, man, that is impactful. And I was trying to think of examples of other places that mimic that same place, where it's a really strong place of growth and healing and growth. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to think, and the only thing I could come up with was a martial arts dojo, right? Like a good one, right? You can't say there's also bad ones out there, but like martial arts done the right way, honoring what it truly should be. That's one of those places of healing and growth that I think, like, and it's because because in the conversation where we went to was when you're talking about that, I was just thinking like, how do we spread that with the world? Like, it seems like this is an amazing thing that has given you so much and is still giving, it sounds like it's still giving you a lot if you're still doing sweats and stuff. But, like, how do we, I always think this way, like, how do we democratize it? How do we bring it to everybody? Like, this is an amazing skill, like meditation, like that changed my life. How do we bring this to everybody? How do we do that? Right. Like, and there's that old saying about leading horses to water, right? Like there's only so much you can do, but I just feel like there's more we can do in so many of these areas of trying to spread this and making it more available to people. Like, fuck, do we got to build sweat lodges in every city? Like, I don't know what it is, or do we, mandate a couple of years of martial arts, in the curricular system? I don't know. Like, but it just seems like there's more we could be doing to make sure that, even if we don't enforce it, but just make sure that everyone has access to those places of healing and growth if they want it. Right. So that if they choose, they have access to it. Everybody, like, I don't know. I just so badly want the world to be a better place. And I feel like there's so many things. I feel like just where we are technologically and where society is, of like how many people are still being left behind, just blows my mind. It seems like all we need to do is just, okay, let's put, and this is impossible. This is a pipe dream, but like, let's put growth on hold for a year. And let's just concentrate on this year for 2022. We're not going to build the next best thing. We're going to look at the world and take the people that are the furthest behind and just catch them up and just completely upgrade the amount of social or human capital we have in the world. Let's bring people up, right? Because now 2023, we have another, 3 billion people in the world that are brought up, and more, like, now we have more people producing, more people, bringing things to the world. Like, I don't know. I'm on my soapbox now. You know what I mean? It just seems
I hear you, man. I hear you.
It just seems like there's so many little things we can do just to make huge change in people's lives. But there's so many of them that it almost paralyzes us, because there's a million things we could do that would help people, right? But like, we're not doing any of them because there's so many we could do. Where do we start? But that seems like such a poor excuse to me, right? Like, just because there's a million things we could do to make the world better doesn't mean we should do none of them. But then,
yeah, it's trippy, right? It's like, what do you mean by better?
Yeah.
Like, and because like that's an idea.
More healed, like
an idea of like what would, I don't know. For me, it's like, the more I get to know myself and the more healthier I feel inside, I feel like, kind of like that thing where you attract healthier people and you get like, or how do I articulate that thought? It's like, cause like, I feel like when I was in my addiction, my life, like I wouldn't admit it at the time, but there were fun times. Absolutely. Like there were fun times, and I'm not saying that there was none, but for me personally, like emotionally, when I was in my addiction and I was at the rankest, I felt like I was living in hell, and like the world was fucked and I was fucked and everything was fucked. And now that I'm like in recovery and that I'm like a million miles away from who I was, and I'm like more comfortable with myself, more comfortable. And for some reason, it makes me more comfortable with life and more more accepting of like how things are, and that everybody's on their own journeys. And all I can really do is like, live my truth and do the best I can, and think about others, and like the only thing I can think, like, what I can do is be an example and sort of just live it, right? Like live it, and like if people see something and they get interested in what I do, then I could show them. Or they, if like, say if I ever do get a sweat, you know, like then someone will know like, oh, well, Cody does sweats and we can go there.
Yeah.
Just trying to think about how, like, I don't know. I just feel like it's weird because now like my life is better than it was before.
Right.
Like it's way more better. And it's like, I do want that for other people. Like I want other people, if they are struggling or if they're okay with it, where they're at, that's awesome. But if they are struggling and they want a better life, like, I want that for them too. And I'm not even sure how to really go about that other than talk about it and just live it. Live what you do.
Yeah.
What you,
and that's kind of same with me of like, I was thinking that of like, the only way that's the realization I came to too. The only way to do it is just kind of lead by example and try and show that the things that mean a lot to you and that have helped you, you got to prove that by living the life that people would want to emulate. And then they can look back at the path that you've walked and to see the tools that you've used. And if they want to get to where you are, they see that they have a full array of tools in front of them that they could try and pick and choose, because they're not all going to be, all the tools that work for me aren't going to be all the tools that work for you.
Right.
But some of them are going to cross over, right? Meditation might not work for you. Cold therapy might not work for you. Breath work might not be for you, but exercise might, you know, martial arts might be it, you know, psilocybin, who knows, but like just all the tools that have helped me, I've laying them out. And that's kind of another piece of the impetus that started this podcast of just, I have so many things that I want to share with people. And the best way that I know how, the best way that they've been shared with me was through this medium, right? The biggest things that changed my life all came through podcasts. The biggest life-changing things have all come through podcasts. And I want to do that for other people. And I'm starting to do that. And I'm starting to gain the skills that hopefully in 5-10 years from now, if I keep on this journey and keep working at it, I'm going to be skilled enough with my words and with my ideas and have enough proof in the pudding for people to put stock in it themselves.
right.
And I can start bringing people along on this journey and start putting my hand back and helping others, and then keep my eye out for people that are in this same spot I am now. In 5 years, I want to look for those people and help elevate them. Right. If I see that person that wants it, that has a true intention and wants to help people and wants to grow, whatever that is, maybe 5 years from now, that's some new thing we don't even know what, like it's the next version of podcast, you know, and internet 2.0, whatever that is, but whatever it is, just to look for those people and try and elevate them, because that's the biggest thing I love in Joe Rogan and Lex Fridman and all these people is they care about others and they want to help people and they want to, you know, like Joe, the way he is with young comedians, I love that, right? Like, I don't know if it's going to be comedians per se, that's going to be my thing that I want to elevate, but just like, I want to elevate people like he does, you know, like, and one of the biggest things I love is people that heal people, right? Like I want to help elevate those people. Like I feel like that's what I'm doing when I have you on. I feel like, and I don't feel like I know, because I got to see the response that people had from your words on that last podcast. And that was like nothing else. Like so many people, like I had people that came and said, you know what, that was a 3.5 hour interview. I listened to it twice. And I'm like, really? Yeah. Like, cause it was that impactful to me and like that. And I know that. And I feel, you know, I feel proud that I already knew, because you've helped me amazingly, right? Like just even before we reconnected, like we have, but in that time where we were still kind of, you know, not talking as much, but I was following your social media, right? And all the words that you're speaking, they were I could tell they came from the heart, and I could tell that they were well researched and that you were doing a lot of work on yourself. And I could see that ring through, and I could see the words of these powerful teachers echoed through you with your flavor on them, right? Because they were coming through your words. It wasn't like at no point was it ever like you were copying people or parroting things. It always had your flavor. So that's when you can tell that somebody's actually taking it in, digesting it, and articulating it themselves. And that's what I loved. So I got to see that. And you were already helping me. And then I got that opportunity to now take this tool, right? Like that has helped me in my growth, and I get to share it with other people. And then to see that effect, that was such a cool feeling. That's why I've been hounding you so much since then to get you back on, because I want to do that for more people, and I want people to have that impact. And you know what, like I might not be there yet where I can help people like the effect that you clearly have already had. And you've been on this path of helping people for a while, well, helping yourself and in essence, learning how to help other people, and then been actively helping people with pound makers for, you know, almost a year now?
No, well, 7 months.
7 months, right? Like getting there, right? But you can see, like, even talking to you now from the last time, I can see all these skills that you've added and the ways that all the different like viewpoints that you've seen walk past you and the different people you've seen along the journey at different points of the journey, you're so better off at, you're so much more articulate at reading other people's journeys now because you've seen so many come by you. And that's fascinating to me to watch that and to watch that. And what always gets me excited is now, this is the second time going on. Like, what's the third one going to be like? Like, like you're already so full of knowledge and so full of wisdom. Like, I just get excited about other people in the future and for myself too, of like, cause that, this is definitely my ego speaking, but one of the coolest parts too was re-listen to that podcast. I don't like listening to the podcasts I do unless I'm having a guest on again. That's usually the only time I'll listen to make sure I'm not, re-talking about the same things over and over again. Yeah. But I feel like you were so articulate and took the conversation places. I was listening to myself like, who is this guy? Like the ideas I was almost learning from myself. Like I clearly was saying these words, but they were so, it felt like like I didn't come up with that. Like who was talking in that moment? That wasn't me. That was someone else. Right. Like, and it was a weird, I've never had that feeling before of like, listen to it like, man, like, but you brought that out of me very clearly,
like,
right?
What they call that's like a sword sharpening another sword. Like steel sharpens steel. Or, yeah. That's it. Well, that's why I like talking with you too. Cause it's like, I can clearly see that like you're very compassionate because like multiple times in this conversation, you've said how you want to help people, and you want to help, like basically empower people. Yeah. And like help people heal and like give people more knowledge and stuff, more like ideas, like more, access to knowledge and stuff. And then that must sounds like it fulfills something in you. It does. And like, that's what compassion is, right? Like caring about other people. Yeah. Like wanting them to have a healthier experience and stuff. And that's something that's definitely something that I admire about you. Oh, I appreciate that. And it's like, even just something as simple as like, like for me, even to just say that I admire another man, something about them, I'm comfortable with that now. Yeah. Whereas before it was hard. It would either add envy or jealous, but admiration. Yeah. Like that's a different feeling. And that's a different,
admiration is something that comes from a healthy place. It does. And it's hard to feel that when you're not in a healthy place.
And it is. Cause I was very envious when I was younger. Yeah. And I still have envy. Yeah, but not, but I have lots of, I can express to another person that like, I admire this about you. I admire this. And
I think that, and I think in that, I don't know, it's a chicken and the egg thing, which comes first, but I think that allows you to admire things in yourself because like when you say you admire that side of me too, that's something that I admire in myself. And I think that's something that I struggled with being okay with talking about like the things you like about yourself because it kind of fell into that thing we were talking about earlier of that cocky side that I was trying to fight so hard against, but that's something I'm really proud of. And I feel like the reason I can be proud of it is because I know it's innate. I've had this since I was little, like this thing with bullies and me, like every time I got in trouble, if you ask my parents, the only times I ever got in trouble in school, because I was a pretty good kid, like I tested limits and I was always, I'd try and get it. Either me getting in trouble was just a hair not funny enough to get me out of the trouble because 90% of the shit I did, I probably should have got in trouble for, but if you can make the teacher laugh, you're not in trouble, right? So always my humor got me out of it. But then the other time was if ever I thought somebody was being treated unfairly, like in the classroom, I would go to war with teachers because I thought they were using their intellect because I felt like I was always smarter and I could see through the games. And when they were playing when I would see like one of my friends or even often it wasn't even my friends, I just felt like a teacher was taking advantage of them because they were older but because I had the knowledge of, I was wise enough at that age, or not wise enough. That's a dumb one. I had the intellect enough at that age to see it. I would lose my mind and I would go after them. I would, like I hated getting in trouble and all that, but it didn't matter. If I was sticking up for someone, it was war paint. Right. And I've always had that in me of when I see bullying, and that's a huge part of who I am now. And that's what I see. And that's where I see all these people being held down. And that's an extension of that feeling is where I hate of where we are in 2021 with all this technology and all this wealth and all this abundance, and that we still have people that are wallowing and that people that are suffering and don't have this and are under the boot of whatever it is. It's just like that taps into that really deep thing about bullies, and that there's people profiting off of it's modern day slavery in a sense. And that just drives me so wild to know that. Right. And you have to take a step back and understand what can you do? And I'm doing what I can do. And that this is where I'm trying. This is how I'm manifesting my thing to try and eventually gain a platform where I can start to address some of those things. But until then, this is what I can address. And knowing that, our first conversation helped people and that this conversation is going to help people, that's a great start, right? Like helping people is helping people. If it's helping, millions of people in a whole country, that's great. But if you're helping one or two people that really are struggling with something, that's great too, right? And that comparison, going back to that's what gets you in trouble. It's when you're trying to compare yourself. Like, sure, you're helping people. You're not helping people like Joe Rogan's helping people, right? Like, where's the where's the benefit in that? Just be happy with what you're doing. And I say that, and then I struggle with it along myself. I do as I say, not as I do. And I'll keep working on it.
I would say it's good enough, right?
Yeah.
Like it's enough. Yeah. And like, that's a real hard thing to say. Mm-hmm. I find for myself is like, I'm doing good enough. I want to do better, but I'm okay where I'm at. Like, I'm okay doing my best. Like, if this is the best I got, this is the best I got. And I know that I'm giving it all I got, and that's enough. Mm-hmm. That's enough for me. And I'm okay with that.
And I'm really trying to work on that. And I struggle with that so much because I feel like it's my ego builds up. Like, if you ask my ego what all I got is, you'll get some crazy fucking answers. So now I'm comparing, right? But now I compare that, and that's what I'm always comparing against, right? Like, I'm trying to be very proud of this podcast and what I've built, and while doing it with a full-time job like that. But what really trips me up is I'm not comparing with other people, Joe Rogan, but I'm comparing myself with what I know I could be. Yeah, and right. Yeah. And, but my mental health wouldn't be that, right? Like I have to keep telling myself, like, yes, you could do all these things and you could have brought this podcast to that place, but you wouldn't have been happy and you would have been miserable with all that thing. And to try and balance out, like, trying to always keep happiness factored into it is what's helping me through that. Because it's frustrating for the podcast not to be where I want it to be and what I know I'm capable of. Right. And I'm not putting everything towards it that I know I could to get it to that point, but I'm still enjoying it. And I think if I went to that degree to bring it to where it needed to be, I don't know if I would love it like I do.
Well, and you might have been forcing it, right?
Yeah, you might be exactly.
Forcing it. And I kind of think there is something to do with like timing and the right time and patience and like, things need to happen sort of like organically. Yeah. Like, there's times when you have to really work hard and push hard and go the extra mile and stuff to get what you want or where you want to be and have those goals and plans. But there's also like a flow of it, a timing to it.
You're right. You're so right.
Like you, I remember in the last podcast, we're saying like, we tried to get this podcast, this talk going for a while and it just didn't work out. But now I just have a belief that everything works out. Yeah. Like everything happens for a reason. Yeah. Even when it doesn't seem like it does. And, patience is patience is a beautiful thing. I've had
that lesson drilled into me so much since I started this podcast of just the weird little idiosyncrasies of just stuff like that, of like trying really hard, like just bending to try and get a certain guest on or something, and then it not happening, having so much frustration over it, and then letting go, and then it all falls into place, and something happens in that intervening time of like a great story that the whole podcast changes. Like if we would have done this 2 weeks before, this event wouldn't have happened, right? Like just time after time after time am I seeing this. Just quit getting so hung up on this stuff. Everything's happening at the pace it's happening, and things are going to happen at the pace you want them to. And you know what? Like if just say whatever happened, some serendipity happened where I got on the right plane with the right guy, where I was sitting beside Brendan Schaub or something. He invited me on the podcast and I blew up, and I'd only had 10 episodes out, say. And I went on this, I got this amazing opportunity, but I wasn't skilled enough at that position because I'd only been, I only have 10 episodes of experience at this time, right? And I wasn't ready for that. And I completely missed my shot, and it fumbles because of that. Whereas now that happens when I'm 300 episodes in and that opportunity comes up and now I'm ready for it. Yeah. That's when those opportunities are going to come. The opportunities are going to come. And this is actually, I'm so happy with how this is working out, because this is what I found so fascinating more than anything of listening to our first conversation was when you were telling your story about coming out and all these different kind of little messages you were getting along the way, right? And you had mentioned a couple today of like the different mushroom trips and kind of the little soft openings of the doors of getting you thinking about it and kind of how it worked you through. And what it seemed like to me was how the universe was waiting for you to acquire the skills to be able to handle it. Because I think maybe if that realization happened at a different time in your life when you didn't have those skills, maybe when you were fully in the grips of your addiction, it might have taken you to a really dark place. And it seemed like at every time of just how much it was giving you was exactly how much you could handle and exactly how much skills you had acquired at that time. And it was just so amazing to be re-listening to it, to watch that. And then for the things that you said today of just how much that matches that, of just whatever you want to call that, whatever, God, creator, universe, karma, there's a million different words for what that weirdness is. But man, is it hard to say that there's nothing there, right? Or to be, for those people that, and this is my argument of, I used to be very atheistic, right? But now this is my argument. Any atheist that says there's absolutely nothing, well, explain to me that and just say you're that confident. You're going to say you're 100% confident there's nothing in the face of this evidence. Not great, like weird evidence stuff, but to me, that at least knocked me from 100% to 99.9. I am not sure of everything. There's some there might be something weird. There might not be, right? Like I'm still not saying that I'm tying myself to any one of those words to really tie my identity and say, because I think that's just to the folly of saying you're 100% confident there's nothing there is the exact same folly as to say I'm 100% sure that it is Christianity, is Jesus, and is this God with all these commandments. This is exactly what it is. I think to me that is the exact same. It's two sides of the exact same folly of just, if it serves you, the stories and the narratives that come around it, sometimes those can serve you. But if you ever give 100% certainty to that's how it is, you're closing yourself off to all this mystery in the world and all this amazingness. But I just thought when I was re-listening to that first episode, just how beautiful it was of how your journey played out, in that you were never handed anything you couldn't handle. And you were always, as your story, you were telling me, and you were acquiring all those skills, you were getting more added to your plate, but you had the skills to handle it, and you add more skills from there, and then you got more added to your plate, and you had the skills to handle it. And just to watch that play out, that was just such a beautiful message to me of just how the world works. And, you know, and you were talking about, that feeling of having to have it all figured out at once, and the pain you felt of that. And that was another lesson to say, you know, you're going to figure this out, and it doesn't have to be all today. I can take my time to figure this out. And that just, I don't know. I just thought there was so much beauty in that conversation. And I feel like I probably should have listened to our conversation earlier when I was getting all that feedback, because now I feel like having re-listened to it today, now all those people that came to me and said like, man, that conversation, because I had the conversation, and I feel like for some reason when I have the conversation, I almost forget exactly what we talked, but I remember the feeling that I had during it of like how much it impacted me. And I remember like very clearly being so impacted by that conversation. That's why I was telling people that's my favorite episode so far, even though I'd never re-listened to it, but of the ones that but for some reason, re-listening to it and experiencing it as a listener, being a couple months removed from it, it was a weird experience. And I feel like now I understand more of what people were saying to me when they were talking about their impact with it. And it was just kind of a weird thing. I just never figured that listening to my own words would, or I guess half my words, half yours, but I was there. I listened to it, but to listen to it again was an interesting experience. I feel like I learned a lot besides just like what we talked about in our conversation. I feel like I learned more about myself and like about what this medium is and what it can do.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's almost like this medium gives you like an opportunity to be both teacher and student simultaneously at the same time. And then also for people who are listening as well, it's like they're part of the conversation, and whether they're the student at the time, or maybe they know a lot more than us than what we're talking about, and they have their own ideas, and then they can connect it to it. And like, there was, like you were saying, like there's a couple people that contacted me after that conversation and said they resonated with certain things and related to certain things. And like, when we had the conversation, like, cause I was nervous, for sure. And I think that's a normal
fairly
thing.
standard,
that's a normal thing to feel. And I wasn't sure of like, okay, like if I have this conversation, what do I want to talk about? And will it add value to people, like in some way, or will it maybe help someone understand where I was coming from and why I did the things I did, or maybe it can help them in some way too. Cause like I see myself as a compassionate person, and I want to help people as well. And so like, I was just thinking about, that last conference. I've only listened to it once after that since then. I'm probably going to listen to it again and listen to this one as well. And just like,
I think I'm going to listen to this one again. I think it kind of changed listen to how impactful that one. I don't think I'll listen to everyone, but now there's going to be certain ones where I think I got to re-listen to now. I think I learned that there's value in it that I didn't see before. I think that's the lesson that I take away, other than the actual lessons that I learned from the conversation, but I just realized that there's value in places that I didn't see before. And I think that's huge. I think that's just another tool that's now in my tool belt.
Well, and what's weird too is like, for me, it's like, sometimes I don't always notice that like what I'm talking about or what I'm sharing could be valuable or could be seen as insightful or anything like that, or articulate when I'm in the conversation, like, and then after, and then people, like, to me, it just seems like common sense, or like, it just like seems like, oh, everyone knows, everyone feels like this, or has these
experiences, or
just like awarenesses, or
I know exactly what
insights,
you're saying.
Right? And then it's like, and then you find out that people are like, whoa, like, I really liked what you said. And I was like, oh, I was just talking. Like, I didn't really think that it would have affected somebody. Like, I was hoping it would, but I wasn't like confident that, like, okay, like, it's this person, it's gonna resonate with this person or these people or whatever.
Yeah.
So
everyone thinks that the theory of mind is 100%, but it's really not, right? Like, do you know what theory of mind is? Like, just it's the ability, like, it's specific to humans, of the understanding that other people, and it's a childhood stage, right? Like when a child gets theory of mind, because for a certain while, a kid, like a 2-year-old, thinks that what he knows, everybody knows, and like, right, like that idea, and then you move past that, and then you understand, like, oh, other people think differently than me, and we have this understanding that that's 100%. But I think we revert back, like, at a very deep level, we do kind of operate as if, well, I know it, why don't you know it, right? And I feel like that's a source of a lot of confusion too, and a lot of frustration. I see that at work a lot of times, where guys like, this is so, like you're trying to explain like things to a driver. How do you not get this? Like, this is so odd. Like, I explained this to you. Like, how do you not? And it's so hard for us to wrap our head around and have that compassion for the other side too. And I think a lot of the work that we've both done and that we're talking about, I think that a lot of that goes towards understanding that and pulling you out of that. Experiencing all these other people's journeys helps you stop identifying with your own so heavily that it prevents you from seeing others, right? And from understanding how others could be different. Right? I think that's another huge tool that is added to our toolbox just by gathering all these other tools. It's just like another thing that helps us on our journey, helps us heal with others, and helps us understand others, because we've got that comfortability stepping outside ourselves and stepping out of our armor of this identity and our viewpoints and everything we know is right, and that truth. Like we talked earlier about truth, what that truth is to you, right? That's very scary for people to step outside of. So that's been 3 hours. I probably didn't even feel like it, but
I feel like there's still a lot of like topics.
Oh man, there's tons.
We could have dived into running,
Wim Hof, man, like all the cold work, but that just means we got to do it again. But one thing before we go that I really wanted to, it was one of those moments where you said something and it really impacted me, and I don't think I wrote it down, but it stuck with me, which I think speaks to it. And I just want to make sure we mention it one more time before we go. Was when you were talking about you with girls in the past, and the love that they were giving you, being loved for a facade that you were putting on, and how that didn't penetrate deeply, right? I think there's so much power to that. And I think that is so much, and that resonated with me of so many of my relationships. And so, and that lack of feeling fulfilled, I think that is if you ever are feeling unfulfilled, if you're listening to this, ask yourself that question. Is the love that you're receiving in your life, because is it love for your true self, or is it love for a facade that you're creating? And that might be your difference. Because if it's love for the facade, it's just feeding your ego. It's nourishing your ego. It's not nourishing your soul. And that is a huge difference. And that you might not realize it. It'll probably have manifestations that once you do realize it, you'll be able to see plain as day of, oh yeah, that's happening. These are outcomes. But if you're feeling unhappiness and you're feeling unfulfilled, maybe sit with yourself and investigate that, because I think that is so common and just rings so many bells with me in so many relationships I've been in, not just like spousal relationships, just relationships with people and who I am, right? To look cool. Like that rings true to me of when I would turn off all those pieces of who I am to go into the hockey dressing room to put on I'm a hockey player now, and I'm turning off all this, and I'm creating this persona to feel love of my friends,
right?
But they're loving this person I'm putting on, which is definitely a piece of me. I do have this, there is a hockey Nick, and that is true to me, but there's also Harry Potter Nick and all those other things that I'd really kind of shove down for that thing. And I get all this love, right? Or in school, being the class clown, trying to be cool and all that. Like so much of that is exactly what you just described, but I've never, until you articulate it like that, I've never understood it like that. And that's that's what I love about these conversations, is just a simple sentence that you said and we kind of breezed by. I haven't been able to get out of my brain since then of like, I just think that it's so impactful, and I'm going to sit with that. I'm going to have to think about that more, but I just wanted to make sure we hit that one more time, because I think that is very important, and I think could help a lot of people right now. So just wanted to double down on that.
Yeah.
We got so much else to hop into on the third episode. I'm going to keep bugging you every week until you come back on. So maybe it'll be 6 months, maybe 2 weeks. We'll see. But I love catching up with you, man. Like I think we mentioned it in the first one, but it's so nice to see the old Cody that I knew, that we used to play Yu-Gi-Oh on the bus and Pokemon and laugh. And it just was always jokes. It was never anger. And then to kind of lose you for a bit and to see you go down that path of anger, it's so beautiful. It almost makes me choke up to think about it. Just, how nice it is to see the old Cody back. And I just love it. And to see that you're helping other people and just how proud of you I am. Like you're my best friend growing up, like back in grade 2 on the bus every day. Like, fuck, I was so proud of you and I looked up to you so much. And I'm so proud to be able to say that I look up to you and I'm proud of you again. Like that is just an amazing experience that I'm so happy to just be a part of your life. And I'm happy for everything that you do. And I'm just happy that you're in this world. So thank you so much for coming on. That's the least of it, but just thank you for being who you are and for spreading your particular brand of goodness and your particular brand of healing. I think it's what the world needs right now. So thank you, Cody.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm very grateful, and I wish you all the best on your podcast journey and your endeavors.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate it.
I just wanted to say something real quick about that thought you had about.
Yeah, for sure. Lay it on me, baby.
Yeah, that I was just thinking that it also works for me on the flip side of like how I always wanted that attention, and I always wanted that love from women, and I needed something from them.
Yeah.
But now on the flip side of that, now that I'm better, like I still do struggle with that, but not even at the same degree or level at all.
Yeah.
I'm a lot better at it. But on the flip side of that is like, now that I am living more authentically and I am living more truthfully, I'm being more of who I am. It works in a way as a protection thing too, because like, for example, like at work, just saying they're saying something, someone says something about my character or something, that doesn't hit my soul either, because I'm like, I know that I'm not like that.
Yeah.
I'm not like what they're saying. And it gives me an ability to have like, to not take things personally.
Yeah.
And to be like, you know what? Like, I know I'm behaving how I am. I'm okay of who I am, how I behave, how I talk, how I present myself, because this is more truthful than I've ever been. And if they say something negative about it, and I can tell that it's not true, like I know in my heart of hearts that it's not true, it doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
It's like that, having that thick skin, or
I know exactly
it doesn't penetrate me.
Yeah.
It's like, it just, like Aubrey Marcus talks about, like that someone will throw an arrow and it's like, it completely misses me.
Yeah.
And I'll even find humor in it. And sometimes I'll even joke around about it and like laugh about it and like make jokes of it, like catch the arrow and just kind of make some humor out of it.
Yeah.
If someone sees me a certain way, and I don't have the same emotional reaction anymore.
Exactly.
What if they want to think that? That's fine.
But that comes with knowing yourself, right? And that's what we talked about in the last episode. The scariest thing anyone can do is sit with themselves and get to know themselves. But once you do, that's the armor you get, because now they can sling all you want, right? And if they say something that does impact and is true, you'll take that to heart, right? Like that's a thing. But but when you're in that place, or where I was just a couple of years ago, where you so don't know who you are that any arrow that they throw, I don't know if it's going to land, because I don't know myself well enough. Maybe I am that way. Maybe like if they say something, but now that I know who I am and I'm confident in that, unless they are really on the money and they have to know you pretty deeply. And most of the arrows people throw are pretty basic, just trying to hurt you in the most basic ways. And if you know that's not true, it doesn't touch you at all.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what comes with all that work, right? You've earned that, right? Exactly. By getting to know yourself. But I'm glad you said that, because one of the biggest things I talk about is trying to find ways to show the benefits of doing that self-work, because it's so hard and there's so many benefits, but they're so hard to show. Like, it's hard to prove to people. I want to show, like, sitting with yourself and asking these tough questions is one of the scariest, shittiest things you can do. But here's all the benefits you get out of it. And I think that's a big one you can have, just walking through the world, not being triggered by every little thing, because you have the knowledge of yourself to know which ones are going to land and which ones aren't. You don't have to be in this perpetual state of on guard, because anything that gets thrown, you don't know if it's going to land or not, right? You just, and I think that uncertainty is almost worse than anything, right? And that, just to be able to walk through that confidence of, you can't hurt me, right? Or if you do hurt me, I know it's going to be for something. It's going to be a tool, right? And you start to see, if you get hurt, that's a positive, because now it's something to investigate. Why does that hurt? What? why does that hurt me? Because it must be true then. And is that something I want to work on? Is that something I want to change in myself? Or is that just part of me and I have to find love for that? Right. And that's the two options. But now you always know it's move forward. It's not a detriment to you to hear those things that trigger you, right? When I get triggered nowadays, I almost get excited because it's like, well, either that's part of me I need to learn to love, or that's part of me I need to learn to change. And both of those things are positive. I'm going to be better for it, right?
Yeah,
so
it's all perspective. Eh?
It's all perspective, but it almost shifts everything so that anything happens to you can be looked at positive. It's this viewpoint shift where it doesn't matter what gets thrown at you. It's all fuel. It turns the world, all the arrows that are coming at you, it's just fuel. And you can move forward at such a rapid pace once you realize that. But again, it's just a tiny little mindset shift, and that's all it is.
Yeah. Perspective.
Yes,
but
sir.
Yeah, I guess that's, we should shut her down. And
Shut her down.
I just wanted to kind of touch on that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad
quick.
you did. I'm glad you did.
I want to, I just want to say like something I say about humility is like an affirmation I say. Like I say this all the time when I run. And it's like, creator, like higher power, whatever I say, don't let me gloat over praise on one hand, and don't let me be discouraged by criticism on the other. Show me how to be humble of heart like you. And that's a humility prayer I'll say to myself, like, because sometimes praise will go to my head, and sometimes criticism will bring me down a bit, and it's just all how I handle praise and criticism. And I think that's the art of being humble.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, let's cut it right there, because I think I'll just ruin that last little bit. I think it's a beautiful place to end it. Thanks again, Cody.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
See you later.
Boom. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that episode of the Von Dubcast. Like I said, I think Cody Twinn is just one of those people that everyone needs to hear from. He's got a really unique viewpoint and a really unique mind that I'm really lucky and what's the word? Blessed. That's a trippy word, but whatever it is, I'm just happy to be able to bring his unique viewpoint to you guys with my little piece of platform here that I'm trying to build. If I can find more people like Cody to spread their message, that's just another feather in my cap, because that's something I hope to one day speak like Cody speaks and help people like Cody helps people. And you know what better way than to sit down and pick their brain for 3 hours at a crack and try and see what makes them so special at that. So I'm thankful I had another opportunity to do it. I'm hoping that it doesn't take as many months to get Cody back on the podcast. Hopefully you can keep spreading more of this goodness here soon. And please pass this on to someone if you think they might know about it. Maybe somebody's struggling with any issues that we talked about, anxiety, depression, addiction, sexuality issues, all these things, just maybe take an account and just see if maybe you think somebody might need this conversation, or maybe even the first conversation between me and Cody, and pass it their way. That's all I can ask of you. I don't even have to ask that. If you don't want to do any of that, who cares? This is a free show. You don't got to do shit. But have a great week. I'll see you guys. Hopefully there'll be another episode this week. If not, I will see you guys on Monday. Bye.